Hello everyone. If you like this audiobook and want to listen to more, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, like it as well, that it enjoy.
Fuck it, we ball. Maybe doing a ritual from a shady site wasn't a good idea. Who would have thunk? I mean, to be fair, the site did constantly try to redirect me to some wacky hentai page every time I moved the damn cursor. That should have been the first sign that the spells weren't reliable. The second was the fact that there were an ungodly amount of typos in each supposed spell. Manuel instead of manual, dual instead of dual, defiantly instead of definitely, you get my point. So why'd I still go ahead and do the spell, you ask? Well, I had already gone as far as to get virgin's blood, and candles made out of human fat. Needless to say, I was too invested already to back out. Disgusting ingredients aside, I wasn't expecting the spell to actually work, sort of. It didn't really work in the way that I had hoped. Instead of summoning a demon to do my bidding, I was promptly blown the fuck up and instantly killed. Whether it was because I did some whack-ass spell from a shady site, or because I had screwed up somehow, I don't really know. All I knew was that I definitely died, and now I was floating in some sort of afterlife. With no physical body, I could only watch helplessly as I floated through the nothingness. Man, those Christians are gonna be really fucking disappointed when they discover that the afterlife is actually just nothing. I was a little bummed out that I died. Not because I had a crazy extravagant life, mind you, I had done a ritual I found online after all. What about that screamed, I'm rich, powerful, and have women throwing themselves at me, to you? Nah, I was just another wage slave in the machine that was modern society. No real friends, no girlfriend, parents didn't give two shits about me, siblings rubbed their success in my face. For all intents and purposes, I was a fucking loser. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't satisfied either. Kind of just meh. I guess I stopped caring after realizing that no matter how hard I pushed and no matter how hard I worked, that in the end, I'd always just be a mediocre existence doomed to work until I died. Maybe that's why I did the ritual. Sucks that it failed, would have been pretty cool if it worked. Even if the demon I summoned would ultimately take my soul. Still, drifting through nothingness was going to be boring as fuck. I wondered how long it would take for my mind to shatter, either from boredom or the passing of time. Fuck this is boring. Congratulations, for successfully performing a magical ritual in a world without magic. You have been chosen to host the divine gacha system. What the fuck? Rewards issued. Welcome gift pack. 2x gacha draw. There's no way, right? Did I go crazy already? The blue screen announcing my rewards faded away before I was once again surrounded by nothingness. Right, this is like those wacky fan fics I read. A system, right? I'm supposed to ask relevant questions. But what's relevant to whatever this is? Still nothing. Fuck it, man, this feels silly. Status. Just like that, the blue screen returned. Name, N.A. Title, N.A. Race, disembodied soul. That gave me absolutely no fucking information whatsoever. This is gonna give me a fucking headache. Whatever, an explanation would be nice. Another mental command dismissed the status screen. I tried a bunch of random commands with no results. Eventually I gave up and just straight up asked for help. Hint. Open the welcome gift pack. I wanted to throttle the system, it was lucky that it was a non-sentient whatever it was. Open the gift pack. Welcome gift pack opened. 1x gacha draw. 1x resurrection token. $200,000. What the actual fuck? I immediately used the resurrection token. I figured that the system or whatever it was, ran off of my thoughts. Simply thinking of what I wanted to do would trigger said action so long as it was available to me. Attempting resurrection. Failed. Retrying. Failed. Unable to resurrect host into original body. Reason. Host's original body was completely vaporized by botched ritual. Attempting alternate path. Fuck, I really screwed up then. How the fuck did that spell vaporize my body? What now? Did I waste that resurrection token? It seemed pretty valuable if it can just bring me back to life had my body been intact. Compatible body located. Wait, what? Resurrecting host in 5. 4. Don't I get a say in this? 3. Stop. 2. Oh fuck, please don't be a baby, please don't be a 1. Scene break. I sat up with a strangled gasp. I was laying on a comfortable bed, considering that my bed had been with me for nearly 6 years and had springs poking out of a few spots. This clearly wasn't my bed. My head exploded in pain as memories that weren't my own decided to curbstomp the fuck out of my brain. Each memory played back like a video, giving me all the information that I needed about what I had just been shanghaied into. My name was now Kentaro. The orphanage didn't list a family name. Not uncommon for babies that were left on the doorstep of an orphanage. The more pressing issue was that the owner of this body had committed Alt F4 on life. Life wasn't easy for him, or I guess me. It's confusing having two sets of memories. On one hand, I could still very clearly remember my life before this, but now I also had access to nearly 2 decades of extra memories. At 18 years old I was promptly kicked out of the orphanage. Luckily my body's previous owner had been a bona fide genius before he had decided to eat a handful of assorted pills he had stolen and chug down a whole gallon of sake. Due to his smarts, mainly thanks to his photographic memory, which I have inherited, he had gotten into a prestigious private academy. And there lay the issue. Kuo Academy. I remember that name, I remember the anime I'm now in. Fucking Tittytopia, I cursed silently. Back to the issue of my body's previous owner quitting on life. The main issue from what I gathered from his, now my memories was that he was seeing weird shit. Monsters, deformed creatures, and, scary, people. I couldn't recall if normal humans could see the supernatural in DxD. Issei was able to see Rainer change into her bondage outfit, and the light spear she ganked him with. This was all before he had even gained access to D-Drake, and from everything that I've read, fanfics included, Issei had shit-ass magic reserves. Like apparently a lump of shit on the side of the road had more magic than he did. So that pretty much confirmed that relatively normal people could see the supernatural. Then why the fuck was this guy such a pussy? Killing himself cause he saw what I assume was some sort of yukai. That didn't matter anymore, I was now in control. I wouldn't chicken out and off myself because I saw a cat girl. I looked around at the barebones room in the small apartment that the academy provided me. There was hardly anything to show me what kind of personality the old me used to have. It was neat and well organized, so I could assume that I had been a bit of a clean freak. I sighed, tossing the blankets aside and sitting up on my bed. Not a great start. I do have a gacha system though, so I'm not entirely screwed. Let's see the damage status. A screen materialized in front of me. Glancing around my darkened room, I could see that it didn't give off any light despite literally glowing. I'm guessing only I can see this shit then, that's good. I looked at my pitifully basic status screen, at least it had changed from when I first saw it. Name, Kentaro. Age, 18. Race, title, Nah. Skills and perks. Photographic memory, passive. Hybrid physiology, passive. Divine Gacha, active. Inventory, 3x Gacha draw, $200,000, 24 million yen. The fuck does hybrid mean? Am I not human? I dismissed the screen and padded over to the bathroom where I glanced at my reflection in the mirror. Black hair, common in Japan, golden eyes, not common anywhere. No extra features, none that I could see at least. I flicked the light off and walked back to my room before sitting on the bed again. Remembering that I had 3 gacha draws, I pulled up my status screen again and looked at my inventory. The 3 draws and the ungodly amount of money made me smile a little. At least I can go fuck off somewhere and not really worry about anything else if things hit the fan. That was my plan. I had always wanted to go to Japan to sightsee and enjoy the tourist experience. Sure, Japan was just basically America with a neon paint job with how shitty the government was and how you were either a wage cuck or just a cuck in general once you left school, but the country had some merits too. The food was great, the air was subjectively cleaner, and then there were the different cafes. Maid cafes, cafes where you could hang out with cats, net cafes with NASA-level Wi-Fi. This was based on knowledge from my old life though. I didn't know if Japan was still the same since I was in an anime world. I mentally selected the gacha draws and activated them with a thought. There were no fancy fireworks or a crazy multicolor wheel. I just got a notification of 3 things being awarded to me. Dark Sister, House of the Dragon, legendary. The legendary sword of Vizina Targaryen, last wielded by Demon Targaryen the Rogue Prince. Crafted from pure Valyrian steel, it is sharper than any blade, stronger than any metal, and highly deadly to supernatural creatures thanks to the magic of dragon fire woven into the metal during its creation. World Jump Token, Random, Mythic. Allows 1 free jump to a random world. Warning. Time does not completely stop in your current world when you're away from it, instead the time will flow at a rate of 1/100th every hour is around 1.67 minutes. Jujutsu Technique, Shrine, legendary. The infamous innate technique of Ryomen Sukuna. Grants the ability to use dismantle, cleave, and divine flames to cook targets. Domain expansion can be learned with time and experience. Note. Unlocks cursed energy in user if the user doesn't already have access to cursed energy, CE. My eyes bulged at the 3 rewards. I'd say Lady Luck was smiling upon me. A legendary sword, a get out of jail card, and an ability that would let me kill enemies dead. I would have been happy with just the shrine ability alone. With 3 more draws I did confirm that the gacha was always going to give me legendary and above rated items and abilities. Though I wasn't stupid enough to think that everything would be good. I wasn't the one deciding the ranking system after all. For all I knew, the gacha could rank a goddess's used socks as mythic. Seeing that I wasn't really going to miss much in Titty Land, I decided that I'd use the world jump token as soon as I could. I wasn't lingering in this death trap of a world longer than necessary before I could get some basic training in how to not die. If I used the world jump token, then I could comfortably spend a whole year in another world and barely a week would pass here. At least that's the number I came up with in my head when I did the math. 1 hour in another world was about a minute and a half here, factoring in a whole day, then a month would only be around 18 hours, give or take a few minutes. Plenty of time to train up and build a solid foundation to my abilities. That said, I wanted to spend some time familiarizing myself with my new abilities, so I would use the token in the morning. Scene break. Turns out, Shrine was pretty intuitive. I don't know how, but cursed energy was really easy to use for me. Every time I flicked my finger to use dismantle to cut the target I had set for myself, a cinder block I had taken from behind my apartment complex, I felt the energy flowing from my body and fueling the attack. I found it funny that Sukuna's innate technique was basically just an overpowered and glorified cooking ability. Dismantle and cleave to cut, and prep and divine flames to cook. It made sense now why the domain expansion was called Malevolent Kitchen. A bit on the nose, but it wasn't far off. I fought back a laugh thinking about Sukuna in a chef's outfit cooking food. I learned that I had a somewhat decent pool of CE. While I wasn't on Sukuna or Gojo's level of bullshit yet, I could easily spam 100 slashes before I felt the mental fatigue that came with CE usage. After I was satisfied with my competency of using my new ability, I took out Dark Sister from my inventory. The slender sword was a thing of beauty. Thankfully it was the version from the show, so I didn't have to deal with an overly ornate sword with a big fuck-off gem on the pommel. I gave it a few practice swings, feeling like a tool. I'd obviously need to find a way or get someone to teach me how to properly use it. The sun was pretty much rising by the time I sat back down on my bed. The sword stashed back in my inventory along with everything I owned in the apartment. Standing from my bed I stashed it away too. You never knew when you'd need a comfy bed. I took the token out of my inventory and glanced at the unassuming coin in my palm. I had barely started having the thought of how I'd go about using it when it shattered into motes of light before vanishing. In a blink I was no longer in my empty room. I spun around and hummed, noticing that I was in some sort of countryside with a vineyard not too far off in the distance. I spotted a few workers tending to the crops. What drew my eye was their clothes. Looks medieval, could be worse. Just as I had that thought, words appeared in front of my face like a demented title screen. Welcome to The Witcher 3, Blood and Wine Edition. 3 years after the main story of Wild Hunt, Geralt is drawn to Toussaint to help with a vampire menace. Fuck, no wonder it looked familiar. Well, at least it's relatively safer than DXD. I'm confident that I can deal with common brigands and I just have to not be outside during the night. I could also theoretically just turn the other way and fuck off back the other way. But the Valen and Novigrad were probably still recovering from the war and I didn't want to slog through war-torn fields. Here I could enjoy the countryside in relative peace while training myself and possibly getting money. My mind made up, I started walking, following the dirt road. Once I crested the small hill I finally spotted a breathtaking sight. A massive castle loomed in the distance. It looked like it came straight out of a fairy tale book. I moved out of the way of a man in full plate armor that rode past me on an equally armored horse. I discreetly took Dark Sister out of my inventory and belted it on. My clothes stood out enough. I didn't want to stick out anymore, so I figured that a sword at my side would pass me off as some sort of strangely dressed traveler. I checked the notice boards that I passed on my way to the castle. I wanted to look for information about what was going on. Unfortunately for me I couldn't read the weird runic language. Strangely enough everyone spoke English, so I didn't have a hard time asking people for directions and information. I was directed to the Cockatrice Inn when I decided to find some lodging for the day. I didn't feel like spending most of the day legging it to the main city, so I decided to get a room at an inn to rest and gather my thoughts. My inventory was nifty in the sense that I could instantly convert my money into whatever local currency was accepted as payment. The conversion rate of dollars to crowns was ludicrous. A dollar was worth about 21 crowns, so I only spent about 50 cents for a room. The rest of the money went into food and drink. Wish it was like this back home, I mused as I sat down on the surprisingly soft straw bed. I munched on some fresh bread and pâté that a wench had brought me. Washing it down with some ale I hummed as I made mental plans on how to get stronger. Shrine is strong as is, can't rely on it though. Dismantle is probably not fast enough to kill a vampire when they can dodge attacks from witchers, and Cleave needs me to make physical contact. I need to unlock domain expansion somehow, and I need to learn to use this damn sword. I give myself a year tops here before issues come up with my absence in DXD. First order of business was growing my reserve of CE, possibly even learning reverse curse technique, then learning to wield the sword. I reckoned that I could find a passing knight-errant to teach me the basics for a hefty sum of gold. My curse technique though, I'd need to just go out and kill stuff until I was on Fraudkuna's level. Plans formulating in my mind, I took Dark Sister off my hip and set it beside my bed while laying back. My exhaustion caught up as I realized that I had been up for more than a day now. Scene break 2 months later. Ken, a man waved at me as I walked down the dirt road. Marcel, what's going on? I asked, dropping the big sack of ghoul heads I was carrying. Something big just happened. Marcel looked panicked. Another body has been found. Damn, I mentally cursed. I hadn't finished the game in my past life. I had finished it up until Hearts of Stone, but my PC decided to crap out on me before Blood and Wine had been released. I had been looking forward to playing the expansion pack, but never got around to it. So aside from being familiar with the game, I didn't know shit about what the expansion was about other than vampires. Who was it this time? I asked. While I had been training with an old knight for the past 2 months, I still wasn't confident enough to fight actual vampires who could turn invisible and move faster than humanly possible. Sure, my shrine technique was better now, but I couldn't exactly slash apart what I couldn't see or track. The ducal guard didn't say. They fished the body out of the water this morning. I hummed. I'm assuming the Duchess hired someone. That's the 3rd body so far. Most likely. I saw Sir de Launfal and de Perrin ride off as if the devil was on their tail a fortnight ago. They have yet to return. Thanks, Marcel. I nodded at the man for the information he shared. His eyes drifted to the sack I had dropped, so I take it the hunt went well then. This is the 2nd ghoul's nest I've cleared out since arriving here. Damn monsters must be coming in from up north. Marcel nodded. From Valen. Most likely. Fighting has been over for a few years now. Ghouls must be looking for new nesting sites. First the beast of Beauclair and now an influx of monsters. God save the duchy. Marcel sighed. I chuckled. Don't worry, Marcel. Delacroix said it would help with practicing my sword play. I'll gladly take any contracts on these beasts if it helps me swing my sword better. True enough, I just hope they leave the vineyards alone. Monster blood must be awful for the grapes. Marcel responded. I picked up the sack of monster heads and waved goodbye to Marcel before continuing on to the Cockatrice Inn. I'd turn in the bounty and collect my pay, then go meet up with my sword fighting instructor. I had hired him a week after my arrival here, Etienne Delacroix. A retired old knight-errant who despite his age was still a great swordsman. Not the best, but his teachings had made me go from wheezing after a few dozen swings to actually holding my own. We practiced with wooden swords. I had bruises still from where the knight had hit me. Washing up after I collected my pay for the ghoul's nest I cleared, I sat down at the inn's dining area and ate some stew. I had maybe an hour before I was due to meet with my mentor and wanted to take some time to rest up before then. Just as I finished my bowl of rabbit stew, the doors flew open and a knight in golden plate armor walked in, followed by a white-haired man in studded leather armor. The 2 swords confirmed his identity, not that his white hair and yellow cat eyes didn't do the same. Geralt of Rivia looks taller in person. I leaned back on my chair to observe the 2 men for a bit. Geralt and the knight who he called Milton asked some questions to a group sitting in the corner before they rushed out of the inn. I wanted to follow them but was more than satisfied in letting the White Wolf deal with it. I was here to learn and get stronger, not interfere with the plot. Quest assigned. Damn, spoke too soon. I grumbled. This was the first time my system had given me a quest. It had been silent the last 2 months. It looked like I'd have to get involved one way or another. Quest. Beast of Beauclair. A powerful monster stalks the night, killing knights mercilessly. Assist in the hunt to stop the beast. Defeat the Beast of Beauclair. Save Anna Henrietta. Rewards. 3x Gacha draws. Return home token. Significant boost in CE. New title. $2 million. I sucked my teeth at the requirements. The rewards were enticing. I had no idea how difficult it would be though. It wasn't very forthcoming with details, and aside from knowing that the beast was a vampire, I didn't know much else about it. Fuck it, we ball. 18 comments, 0 vote. The beast. I whistled softly as I walked down the path that led to the river flowing beneath the bridge attached to the Cockatrice Inn. Milton and Geralt were already by the river, with the Witcher crouching every once in a while to examine tracks on the ground. Geralt was the first to notice me as he stood from a patch of dirt he had been examining. Greetings. I raised my hand. Ah, young Ken, what brings you here? Milton asked. I had met the man in passing. Etienne had introduced him to me a month into my training. He knew me as the young man that Delacroix was training. Heard another murder occurred, thought I should check things out. Milton hummed while cupping his chin. I see, perhaps you could assist us then. This is Sir Geralt of Rivia, a witcher that Her Excellency has called to for help in this matter. Milton gestured towards Geralt, who nodded without saying anything. Geralt, this is Ken. He's currently training under a retired knight. He's been taking bounties on foul beasts in the area. Speaking of, did you just come from a hunt, my young friend? Milton continued. I nodded. I cleared a ghoul nest not too far from Marcel's vineyard last night, just got back this morning. Ghouls, huh? Impressive, Geralt voiced. Nothing to it, Sir Delacroix taught me well. Speaking of, are you not missing your lessons? Milton asked. I waved him off. Etienne wouldn't mind if I skipped on a lesson, not when I'm helping out. Milton smiled. Very well then, my young friend, I shall not turn away another eye. I followed them as we tracked along the riverbank. Geralt eventually stopped by where the fishermen had their nets set up. Trail ends here, he said in his gruff voice. This is where the fishermen dragged the body from most likely, Milton observed. Without another word, Geralt jumped into the water and didn't surface for a good minute. He came back up looking less than pleased. Seems the body got caught in the nets. The fishermen must have cut it free. Then the ducal guard carted it off by boat. You got all that from a few tracks? I asked. Geralt turned to me. We Witchers are trained to notice these things. Makes tracking monsters easier. Well, did you find anything? Milton interrupted. Geralt nodded as he held up a scrap of cloth. Handkerchief, good quality fabric. Embroidered with the letters, D, L, C. I froze, my blood running cold. Delacroix, I whispered. Milton frowned. Palmerin knew him better than I. Pardon me, Geralt, Ken. I must go notify the Duchess. Milton jogged off, leaving Geralt and I standing at the riverbank. I'm sorry, kid, Geralt muttered. I frowned. It was just yesterday that he was teaching me footwork. I can't. Geralt put a hand on my shoulder. I'll find the monster responsible. I nodded at him. Let me help then. I may not have known him long, but he was a good man. I'll flay the bastard that did this. Geralt seemed hesitant at first but eventually nodded. Let's get started then. We were being watched moments ago. I believe we should head back to the inn to get more information. I didn't think much of it. The locals like to gossip. I wasn't surprised that someone was watching the investigation. Scene break. We returned to the inn. Geralt asked around and discovered that the ducal guard had carted the body of my mentor to Corvo Bianco. Corvo Bianco had been the vineyard of some noble who ran into financial trouble. I learned that in my first month here. As far as I knew, no one lived there. Geralt and I made our way to the vineyard at a brisk pace. It wasn't too far from the inn. The Witcher tensed. I smell blood, he said. I heard the fighting before I smelled the blood. Shouts, screams and the screech of steel armor being torn open. We ran the rest of the way only to witness the sight of a slaughter. Ducal guards lay in pools of blood. One guard crawled towards us as if begging for help. I drew Dark Sister, prompting Geralt to draw his silver blade. We cautiously followed the trail of blood and broken bodies towards what looked like a cellar. Geralt pulled a potion from his hip and drank it, hissing as his veins turned black. We're likely dealing with a vampire, he explained. Here, take this. He handed me a glass sphere filled with silvery dust. It's a bomb filled with silver dust, should negate the vampire's ability to turn invisible, he explained. I nodded and attached it to my sword belt. We descended down the cellar. More bodies lay crumpled along the way. I channeled CE into my body, a new facet of my ability that I had been learning to utilize. We eventually came into the main room of the cellar where I spotted a naked woman seemingly digging through a covered body. I wanted to rush in and stab the woman but thought better of it. Geralt opened the gate, the metal groaning alerting the woman of our presence. The woman from the inn, Geralt murmured. I thought back to when Geralt mentioned being watched. This must have been the person he spotted. I narrowed my eyes at the woman. She was beautiful, undoubtedly. She had long wavy black hair plastered to her face by the blood covering her nude body. She said something along the lines of retrieving something for her master before she dropped what looked like a severed hand and vanished. Geralt pushed me away and dodged as the woman reappeared between us, slashing her claws at where we had been standing. I regained my footing and sent a slash at the woman's hip with Dark Sister. The woman dodged but was forced to jump back as Geralt thrust his hand forward, sending a kinetic blast towards the vampire. I pulled the silver bomb from my belt and lobbed it straight up. The glass container shattered and a cloud of silvery dust rained down on the enclosed room. The vampire hissed and slashed at me. I blocked the strike and unfortunately for her my sword cut right through her hand. She screeched at me and kicked me in the chest, sending me flying back, painfully crashing into a barrel. I growled and jumped back on my feet. Geralt had engaged the vampire. I watched in awe for a moment. Geralt moved with elegance as he fought the vampire. Each strike was precise, not a single movement was wasted as he basically danced and spun around and around. The vampire jumped back and lunged at me, seeing me as the weaker of the two. I raised my free hand and channeled my CE, flicking my finger. I sent a dismantle her way, cutting her arm clean off. Geralt capitalized on the moment and drove his sword through the woman's chest. I surged forward and swung my sword, decapitating the vampire, who barely had a second to look surprised before Dark Sister separated her head from her shoulders. I took a breath and flicked the blood off my sword. Geralt glanced at me before nodding. You're good, still have room to improve though. Delacroix always said the same. I replied with a sad smile. Geralt knelt down and examined the body of the vampire. Bruxa, a type of higher vampire. Strong, likely a century old or more. Then he examined her severed arm. Interesting ability. He looked at me. It's an ability of mine, think of it like your signs. He nodded. Useful that, let's examine the body. I was glad he didn't press. Geralt was observant if anything, so he must have noticed that my magic didn't function like regular magic. I stood off to the side as Geralt examined the corpse. It was more to stand guard while he did his thing rather than the fact that I didn't want to see my teacher's mutilated body. Never seen anything like this. Geralt hummed. I turned to him, found something. He nodded. There's an extra hand, this one probably belonged to the killer. He waved a severed hand over his shoulder. It took one look to be able to summarize that the hand didn't belong to a human, despite it being very humanoid. The fingers were longer, each fingernail was sharp and pointed. There was also an ornate silver ring adorning one of the fingers. Looks like a stereotypical vampire hand, what of it? It's still alive, Geralt replied bluntly. Alive? The flesh is still slightly warm, that and the blood still flows from it. I turned to the Brux's corpse. It was right where we had left it, the pool of blood had stopped growing around it. I went over and crouched next to the cold corpse. Prodding it with a finger, I felt nothing but cold flesh. Probably a different species of vampire. I turned to face Geralt. A different species? How many are there? Vampires can be split into two categories. Higher and lower. Katakans and Ekimas fall into the lower category. More bestial, driven by their baser instincts. Whereas higher vampires can take human form and are capable of intelligent thought. I straightened up and wiped my hand off on my trousers. So this Bruxa and whoever killed Delacroix are the same. Not enough information to come to conclusions yet. Geralt shook his head. So what now? I sighed. Now, I'll go meet with the Duchess, let her know that there's possibly a coven of vampires. You can stick around and see if you can find anything else that I might have missed. I nodded. Good luck, Wolf. He gave me a passing glance before bagging the severed hand and walking away. Scene break. I rummaged around the wine cellar for another few hours before calling it quits. I didn't find much, a hidden room and a few odd coins in a sack stuffed in Delacroix's mouth. It all seemed rather cultish, the way my teacher's body had been mutilated, seemingly after he had been killed. I turned back to the Brux's body. I grabbed a linen sheet and draped it over the corpse. This wasn't the first humanoid being I had killed. I had cleared out a few bandit camps with a few ducal guards. Something was different though. I had always felt odd when I had to kill women in games. Maybe it was due to my upbringing. I was taught to respect women, and killing them, even in games, left a bad taste in my mouth. Still, this wasn't technically a woman, this was a monster, a vampire. Not like the vampires from back home where they were formerly human, but an entirely different species altogether. Scene break. Geralt came back just as the sun was setting. He looked less than pleased. Got nothing. Henrietta was rather defensive about information pertaining to the killer. So what now? I asked. Geralt hummed. We rest, I'll investigate some more tomorrow. Should we go back to the inn then? I asked. No, Henrietta, she gave me a portion of my reward, ahead of completing the bounty. I tilted my head. Did she give you a house? He frowned. No, she gave me this place. I raised an eyebrow. This place. She realized that there's dead bodies everywhere, right? Geralt sighed. We better get started on cleaning then. Right, wait, Scene break. Thankfully, the Duchess had seen fit to send a few men to help clean the place up. Geralt and I focused on cleaning out the modestly sized home. I dusted while he made sure there wasn't anything shady or potentially dangerous that someone would accidentally touch. The moon was high in the night sky by the time we sat down after finishing up. The guards had left after collecting the bodies to be buried, or in the vampire's case, to be burned. Etienne was going to be buried as a knight would, though there really wasn't a ceremony. I still felt the sting of loss thinking about how the old man who had been teaching me to use my sword had suddenly been killed. We should get some rest soon. Geralt hummed. I agree, I'm exhausted. I nodded. The guest room upstairs is yours for as long as you need it. Geralt offered. Thanks, you're surprisingly generous for a witcher. I smirked. Geralt let out a grunt. Don't get used to it, I could use all the help I can get with this vampire. I have a feeling that it'll be a difficult hunt. Let's hope not. I'm barely passing when it comes to swordplay. I replied, standing up. I can give you some pointers tomorrow morning. Geralt shot at me as I was going up the stairs. I'd like that, to learn from the infamous White Wolf would be an honor. Scene break. Again, I growled as I picked myself up from the ground. Geralt was a brutal teacher, he countered all my attacks effortlessly. Disarmed me within the blink of an eye and sent me stumbling onto my ass with nimble footwork. You're overextending on your thrusts, let the sword do the work, flow with every move. He pointed out. I groaned, that doesn't make any sense. He sighed, Watch me. He performed a quick thrust with his steel sword, stepping forward and spinning away just as his sword made contact with his invisible target. But, isn't spinning generally counterintuitive to fighting? You're leaving your back open? I asked. In some cases yes, however I know you're just as fast as I am, which negates that opening. Also, you don't need to spin, just remember to flow with each of your attacks. String them together, stitch a slash into the end of a thrust. Okay, I think I get it. The basis for the fighting style of the School of the Wolf is being able to fight multiple opponents at once. Geralt said. I can see that, I admitted. Good, let's go again then. We have some time to kill before I have to go attend an event with Henrietta. A date? Geralt scoffed. No, it's some sort of treasure hunt. I see, not a big fan then. I grinned as I got into a fighting position across from him. No, scene break. I whistled time in a bottle as I walked through the ancient elven city turned pseudo-French duchy. Geralt was off doing God knows what in that treasure hunt he mentioned. Knowing Geralt, he probably either got sidetracked by something or the treasure hunt took a turn for the worst. Poor guy's luck was just that bad sometimes. The sun was beginning to set again and my body had fully recovered from training all day. I bought a pastry from a nearby vendor and kept walking as I explored the town. Geralt had invited me to suffer alongside him, but I politely declined. I still needed to clear my head and come to terms with the death of my original teacher. I wasn't crazy attached to him, but he had practically been my first friend in this world. I wasn't going to let some vampire get away with killing him. I heard a commotion towards the docks. I finished up my pastry before putting a hand on the hilt of my sword before reinforcing my legs with cursed energy and dashing towards the noise. I made it just in time to see a red and black blur jump across the top of a boat's sails before vanishing into a building. A figure with white hair jumped across the sails too and crashed into the ground, rolling to absorb the impact. Geralt, did he find the vampire? I surged forward with a burst of speed, effortlessly jumping from ship to ship before coming to a sliding stop in front of the warehouse that Geralt and the red-black blur had disappeared into. Geralt was standing in the center of the large room. I drew my sword and stood back to back with the Witcher. What is it? Did you find it? I asked quickly. The killer fled to this warehouse, I didn't sense it leaving. Geralt replied. I strained my senses trying to feel the air around me. I caught the smell of blood in the rafters above and looked up. A figure obscured in shadows was looking at Geralt and I. It growled, seemingly annoyed that I had spotted it. Then it was gone. Alarm bells rang in my head. I moved but I was too slow. I shouted in pain as a hand was stabbed into my gut. Geralt slashed forward, cutting the vampire's torso, making it retreat. I fell on my knee and clutched at the gaping hole in my stomach. Fuck, I cursed out, fighting through the pain. He was too fast. My vision was getting hazy. I gripped my sword tight and fought through the pain. Using Dark Sister as a cane, I got back on my feet. My mind working overtime as I pushed cursed energy into the wound. Blood escaped from the corners of my lips. Geralt jumped forward to defend as the vampire attacked again. 2 negatives make a whole, 2 negatives, smash them together, damn it. I felt my cursed energy broil as I forcibly and violently pulsed it in my body. I fell on my knee again, my sword slipping from numb fingers. No, I refused to die here. My vision darkened. 5 comments 0 vote. Geralt. Pause shift. Geralt, the beast of Beauclair, a higher vampire. I don't even know why I took the contract in the first place. Triss made enough money for the both of us to live comfortably. I still went out on the occasional hunt to keep my skills sharp. It was the only reason I was back in Valen. I saw the contract on a notice board, stamped with a familiar signet. It felt like a lifetime ago since I had seen that signet. Toussaint, the Duchy of Anna Henrietta. The contract was for a killer that I immediately took notice of, and it was directly addressed to me. It seemed fresh and not as worn down as the other contracts, so the posting had to have been made recently. I took it with me and set off to meet with the men who had posted it. They had been staying in a local village not too far off. I was surprised to see some familiar faces, Milton de Perrin and Palmerin de Lanfel, 2 old friends. They had told me their plight, a beast killing men seemingly at random. The ducal guard couldn't catch it, so Henrietta had called for me. Long story short, I had accepted it. We set out for Toussaint after dealing with a few bandits. I was thankful for the warm-up because not a few moments after reaching the duchy, did we immediately run into trouble. A giant, apparently a cursed knight, had chased another knight into our path. Once again I stepped in and helped take the giant down with a well-placed crossbow bolt to its eye. I didn't mind giving the credit to the knight it had been chasing though. Poor kid refused it though. Said he wanted to gain honor for his lady friend with his own hands. Then we learned that another body had been found sometime just as we arrived. Milton went off to announce my arrival to Henrietta. Palmerin and I decided to investigate. There we met Ken. The young man was a mystery to me. He had apparently been training under the man whose body was found. I watched him fight a Bruxa. He had skill. There was no denying that, but he was confident, maybe not vocally, but I could see it in the way he moved. Then there was his strange power. He had said it was like my Witcher signs. I doubted it though. I knew my signs and I knew magic. What he did was closer to magic than my signs. I didn't press though. Some people deserved their secrets, and I knew that he was still reeling from the death of the man who had been teaching him to fight. I met with Henrietta twice after that, once to discuss my role in the hunt and investigation of the killer behind the recent murders. Then again to take part in the silly treasure hunt. We learned that the next target was Milton. I went to find the knight, but it was too late. The vampire had been standing over his cooling body when I had arrived. I chased the bastard through the rooftops and the streets before it vanished into a warehouse. I didn't have time to drink a black blood potion or even prepare oils for my sword. I scanned my surroundings with my sword drawn when I entered the warehouse. I could still feel it nearby. My medallion was trembling like crazy. Then I heard a noise behind me. Sparing a glance, I saw Ken enter the warehouse and stand back to back with me with his own sword drawn. "What is it? Did you find it?" he asked, eyes darting around. The killer fled to this warehouse. I didn't sense it leaving," I replied. I wanted to tell him to run. This was beyond him. Hell, I wasn't sure I would be able to handle the vampire either. Not from how fast it moved, not from the sense of danger it radiated when I had seen it standing over Milton. Ken tensed behind me. I turned and looked at where his eyes had gone. Up there in the rafters was the vampire, half shrouded in darkness. But its eyes were clearly on us. I could almost feel the hatred in those orbs. It vanished. I tried to get Ken to move. I knew monsters. I knew they were smart enough to go for the weakest link. Ken had just barely learned to hold a sword. He was far from the strongest despite his potential. Too late. The vampire reappeared and drove its hand into Ken's stomach. Ken's eyes widened. I moved forward, slashing at the vampire, cutting its chest only for it to vanish again. "Fuck," Ken mumbled, falling to his knee. "Ttoo fast, he was too fast." Ken tried to get back up, using his sword as a crutch, but he had already lost too much blood. He fell backwards with a ragged gasp. His sword clattered against the dusty ground. The vampire attacked once more. I blocked it and grit my teeth when I felt the impact reverberating through my arm down to my bones. I pushed back and retaliated with several slashes, only to hit nothing as the vampire vanished into mist. Growling, I focused on a new plan. I knew from blocking that hit that I wasn't a match for this vampire either. There was no shame in admitting that. Even with my experience and inhuman strength, there were just some fights I couldn't win. Ken's uneven breathing slowed. I ducked under a slash that came from behind me. Blocked another downward blow that nearly made my knees buckle. I needed to focus. This vampire had killed Milton. It had dealt a mortal wound to Ken, the young man I barely met but reminded me so much of Siri. I lashed out with a kick as the vampire lunged forward again. I was surprised when it connected. Seizing the opportunity, I began my chain of attacks, not caring that each one was easily blocked by the vampire's razor-sharp claws. Then it vanished in a flurry of movement, something I was begging to really hate. I kept my senses sharp. I knew it was still lurking, watching me for an opening. I felt the air move behind me and I spun around. The vampire slapped my sword away, making me curse silently as it drew back its arm. I knew what was coming. I needed to move. I feared that I was too slow. Its arm shot forward, then froze. The vampire's eyes widened in shock at something behind me. "Oi, cunt," I heard a familiar voice behind me. I stared, baffled at what I was looking at. Ken was back on his feet, a manic grin on his face. Fully healed, as if he hadn't just been gutted and bleeding out. The higher vampire seemed equally as baffled. It took a cautious step backwards as Ken began to speak again. "Should have gone for the head, asshole, but now I get it, hee ha ha ha. It's fucking wonderful. Oh, the feeling of life. This is the peak of life. I suppose I have to thank you for that, Mr. Vampire, sir. Without you this wouldn't have been possible." The vampire looked confused. I was confused. The first thoughts through my head was, is this kid intoxicated? Ken rambled about random shit for a few more moments, seemingly voicing his thoughts out loud, mentioning a man named Gojo and someone he called the Fraud King. The vampire seemingly had enough of the rant Ken was spewing out like a fountain. He rushed forward, fully intent on beheading the miraculously restored young man. I wanted to kick myself for being distracted by the insane rambling. I moved too slow. Only to my surprise, Ken ducked under the slash. The young man bent backwards, planted his hand on the ground. Ken then moved. It was strangely graceful. Flipping completely over, Ken spun on his hand and kicked the vampire, his foot connecting with the vampire's jaw. My own jaw nearly fell open at what followed. There was the sound like lightning as a crackling black flash burst from the moment Ken's foot struck the vampire's face. The vampire roared in pain and charged forward again. Ken simply spun around the vampire's attack, his face a mask of ecstasy. Ken's sword appeared in his hand and he slashed downward, at the same time he flicked his wrist. The vampire caught the sword, but roared again when it cut through his palm. I never asked Ken, but clearly his sword was much sharper than my own silver blade. The vampire stumbled back, as a wound was opened above its brow. Ken's distinctive invisible slashing attack. It vanished, and reappeared behind Ken. I jumped in and shouldered it away. The vampire growled and vanished again, reappearing in the rafters. Ken was grinning when he glanced at me. Kept you waiting, huh? Focus, I grunted as I retrieved my silver sword from where it had fallen. Relax, old man, I got this. Confidence will get yo. Oi, vampire cunt, come back down here so I can shove a black flash up your asses. Thanks for teaching me reverse curse technique. Ken, the vampire narrowed its eyes at us before vanishing completely. My medallion stopped buzzing and I let out a tired sigh. Then another voice came from behind us. Oh my, seems I'm too late then, glad to see I wasn't needed though. I turned sharply. Regis. Ken turned as well. Oh, you're awfully pale. Say, are you a vampire too? I sighed. This night was starting to look like it was going to be filled with explanations. Scene break. How did I know it was going to end like this? I shook my head, watching as Regis and Ken laugh while passing a bottle around like two old drinking buddies. I had explained that Regis was a good vampire, and Ken had taken it in stride. I was still dumbfounded at how he had survived having his guts nearly torn out. He explained it, simply, and it had only left me with more questions. Well, I was dying so I just took my energy, smashed it together, added a bit of flair then wham bam, no more hole in my stomach. Easy right? I had wanted to reply, no, that's not how healing works. There's no magic like that, Triss would know about it, I would know about it. What do you mean smash it together? Smash what together, you brain? He had come down from what he called his high. Regis had invited us to where he had been staying for the time being. A graveyard. Ken had thrown a few jokes about a vampire living in a graveyard at Regis. The vampire had taken it all with a smile. Regis had also been interested in Ken's miraculous recovery after I had told him what had happened. Next thing I know, the two suddenly became drinking buddies. I was sharpening my silver sword as I continued to listen to them talking. Sharing stories even, Regis about the time he had been reduced to a puddle by Vilgefortz and Ken about the time he discovered his abilities and how he likened them to being a chef. Before the conversation could stray even further from what it had originally been, that being what we would do going forward dealing with Detlef. Regis had provided the vampire's name. Apparently Detlef was a close friend of his, the one who had resurrected him after what Vilgefortz had done. We will probably need to bring Anna Henrietta into the loop. The two sobered up and glanced my way. Yes, I don't see an issue with that, though I still must insist that we try to deal with Detlef peacefully. I know my friend, he would not harm others for the sake of harming them. There must be a reason for his apparent rage. Regis replied. You're looking to make a potion, right? I asked. Yes, I mentioned it earlier. We will need some of Detlef's flesh or blood. Will this do? I pulled out the severed hand from my pack. You were carrying that with you this whole time? Ken asked me with a slightly disgusted look on his face. I glanced his way, before replying. Figured it was important. Sure, you two can go brew your witchy potion. I'm going to go get a change of clothes. This shirt is rather holy. I stared impassively at Ken. The shirt was the only evidence that he had been injured earlier. I planned to ask him to clarify some more of his strange abilities. I knew they'd probably be very useful if it came to fighting Detlef again. 8 comments 0 vote. I always feel like somebody's watching me. Pav restored. I collapsed on a lumpy couch in Corvo Bianco with a deep sigh. My body still felt tingly, learning reverse curse technique in a cliché way, landing a black flash. It really did make people high. I can understand why Gojo was tweaking when he had first learned RCT in the anime. The back-to-back unlocking of RCT and Black Flash had also significantly increased my cursed energy reserves. I didn't really have a standard to compare myself to, so I didn't know where I stood in terms of energy levels. At the start of my journey, I was only able to throw maybe 100 to 200 dismantles before my brain started protesting. 2 months of training increased that number to the thousands, and now, my reserves felt bottomless. I felt as if I could spam dismantle and cleave endlessly. If I knew domain expansion, I felt as if I could use it 2 or 3 times in a row before my gray matter started leaking out of my face. I got up and went to the washroom where a tub filled with cold fresh water was sitting. Anna Henrietta had seen fit to assign workers, servants for Geralt's vineyard. They took care of everything, and apparently they had arrived a few hours ago judging by the water's warmth. I cleaned myself off and made my way upstairs to the guest quarters. There was a decent-sized bed and dresser there. I changed into some spare clothes and sat at the foot of the bed. I had heard a chime when Detlef ran off after I smashed his face in with a black flash. I focused on calling for the system and watched as a blue screen appeared in front of me. Congratulations, you have survived for first near-death experience and learned one of the pinnacles of Jujutsu sorcery, reverse curse technique in black flash. For your achievements you have earned 2x gacha draws. Huh, so it does reward me outside of quests. The event has to be significant though, so I can't just make my bed for the first time and get a draw. I contemplated saving the draws but decided against it. I could feel that the story was nearing its climax, so I'd probably get more down the line. It made no sense to stockpile draws when each one would guarantee a legendary pull at the very least. Use both draws. Evil pieces, mythic, enchanted chess pieces that can resurrect an individual into a devil. Each piece significantly boosts an individual's potential. Pawns grant a promotion ability, rooks grant a significant boost to strength and defense, bishops grant a significant boost to magic, knights grant a significant boost to speed, and the queen grants a significant boost to everything in general. Note: this set is now tied to your soul. You are the king piece. Any individual you resurrect are compelled to obey your commands. Rias Grimori's bath water, legendary. Water taken from Rias Grimori's most recent bath. Ingesting this water will grant a significant boost to all destructive abilities as well as significantly raising an individual's luck. What the fuck, why? I'm not even gonna touch that. Wait, let's not be too hasty though, boosts in luck and destruction. Also, I fucking knew it. I knew this damn gacha system was too good to be true. Of course there were going to be some whack-ass items on the prize pool. I huffed and took the items out of the inventory space they were stored in. The evil pieces were in a lacquered wooden case, though I felt as if I could summon them piece by piece if I wanted to. Rias, bath water came in a small clear bottle that fucking sparkled like it had glitter in it. I had half the mind to just toss it and forget that I had even owned it at one point. The 2 rewards were a reminder though. I have been in the Witcher universe for 2 months now. I had almost forgotten that my own universe was the place where boobs were power-ups and devils had a strange obsession with chess. TCH, that's a problem for future Kentaro. I can't get distracted right now. Gotta focus on the fact that a vampire that can only be killed by another vampire is trying to kill me. Regis had explained it earlier. He and Detlef were the same species of higher vampire. The kind where they were so overpowered that the only way to kill them was if another one of their specific kind of vampire killed them. Wonder if he can survive getting diced into small chunks then vaporized with divine flames. I won't even need a domain for that. Sure, I won't have a direct hit effect, but I can't still spam slashes and I'm pretty sure I can use the flames now. I laid back on the bed and closed my eyes. So much shit, I think I'll take a nap. Scene break. The next day Geralt didn't return. I wasn't worried. The man was infamous for his skill as a witcher. He had survived this long. I knew that he'd survive through skill or his plot armor. I practiced with my enhanced abilities for the whole day, sending dismantles at a crumbling wall that hadn't been repaired yet behind the villa. It was going to get torn down anyways, I may as well help out. The slashing attacks came even easier now that I had unlocked my full potential. I trained boxing and mixed martial arts on a tree. Every time I cut up my knuckles on the rough bark, I'd heal myself with RCT. I let my muscles naturally recover though, healing them instantly would be counterintuitive to working them out. I also tested the limit of my RCT. I learned that I theoretically didn't even really need to sleep anymore. I could use my cursed energy to constantly refresh my brain. At least, I could for as long as I had cursed energy to burn. I didn't think I was on Gojo or Sukuna's level of cursed energy levels yet though. Those two were cheat characters in the anime and the only reason they ever really lost was because Gerger Akutami is a twat waffle and hated his fans and his characters. Still, I felt my reserves growing each time I used my cursed energy. It wasn't much, but it was something and I'd be damned if I didn't take advantage of it. Geralt still hadn't returned a week since I came back to Corvo Bianco. The men Anna Henrietta had sent to renovate the place had done their jobs well. Nearly all of the vineyard was restored. All that was left was the house. They wanted Geralt's opinion on how they should remodel it. I wasn't idle during this time. I returned to taking contracts on monsters and bandits in the area. A week of fighting and using my innate techniques made me comfortable with my current skill level. I felt as if I was on the verge of finally learning domain expansion. I didn't have a conventional teacher, so I learned by experience and my own shaky memories of the anime. I couldn't quite figure out how to cast a simple domain yet, but I had gotten a basic, veil, technique down. It wasn't as difficult as I had imagined. I mainly had to focus on my CE and I figured it would be easier to cast if I knew the chant for it, but I wanted to get proficient enough at it to not need to. I pocketed my reward from my most recent job when I spotted a shady-looking individual lurking a few steps behind me. I didn't need enhanced senses to know that the figure was following me. I ducked into a narrow alley between two buildings and waited. The second the figure stepped into the alley, I activated a veil through sheer willpower alone. The drain to maintain this veil is manageable, but I really need to get more efficient at it. Now, let's see who's been following me. The figure looked around in a panic as a translucent bubble popped into existence around us. It wasn't complex, just a simple curtain that would make people ignore the general area it was cast on. Who are you? I questioned the figure, my hand resting on the pommel of my sword. A feminine voice answered, as the figure lowered their hood. Sylvia, my name is Sylvia. She looked at me, panic barely concealed in a mask of calm. So, Sylvia, why are you following me? I asked her. And before you lie to me, know that I will know when you are not being truthful. It was a bluff, but she didn't know that. I slowly leaked my cursed energy out to create an atmosphere of negative emotions. Sylvia paled slightly, which was impressive since she already had porcelain skin. You fought with the beast. I squinted at her, and how would you know that? It was the ducal guard. I heard them speaking about how a young man and a witcher had fought the beast. I hummed, she was lying. It didn't take a lie detector to tell me that. That information was only known by a few people, specifically 3. Me, Geralt, and Regis. I see, and what does that have to do with you? Clearly she knew more than she let on. From the way she was dressed to the way her hair was done, she wasn't some random tavern wench. She carried herself like a noble. That was a big red flag as is. Nobles, like politicians, were all manipulative and two-faced. No matter how nice and harmless they made themselves out to be, they always had something more under the surface. Sylvia touched my arm, an action that was supposed to be seductive. Meanwhile all I was thinking was, lady, I'm Kentaro fuck mothering, last name pending, just cause you brush against me and flash me some cleavage doesn't mean I'll turn into some drooling simp. I think the beast is after me. She whispered, I need help. You're damn right you need help, you need a shrink. Sure, I hummed noncommittently, and why is the beast after you? I cannot tell you this. She shook her head, sadly. Right, I drawled, if you join me, gain my trust, I could tell you. I'll tell you everything, she whispered. Hard pass. She blinked, pulling her hand away from my arm. Excuse me. Nah, I crossed my arms, just cause some shady tart tries seducing me with a frankly amateurish technique, doesn't mean I'll jump at her command. Shady tart meaning you, Sylvia, or whatever your real name is. I scoffed. My name is Sylvia, Sylvia Anna, her face flushed in annoyance. UMHMM, and I'm Arthur, King of the Britons. I replied in a pompous British accent. She narrowed her eyes at me. I hope you reconsider. Reconsider what? Your barely hidden shady offer of partnership. She sighed and stepped back. Listen you fool, I am offering you more than a partnership here. Some expired pussy isn't going to get me to abandon my morals, woman. Expired, you, very well, you have made your choice. She tries to walk away only to realize that my veil made it practically impossible for her to find the exit. Going somewhere, you still haven't answered my questions. I called to her. Release me. Nah, I don't think I will. Her lips became a thin line as she glared at me. She drew a dagger and I raised an eyebrow. She then created a small wound in her hand. Showing me her bleeding appendage, she smirked. Is that supposed to do anything? He will come to me. She replied as if her answer was some big revelation. I set my hand back on Dark Sister. My mind working overtime, piecing together everything I had learned. Sylvia was definitely a noble, she more than likely had some plot, and going off of what she had just done, she also had a connection to a vampire. Detlef is probably on his way here. I'm guessing the knights that have been murdered recently probably pissed this woman off and Detlef is her attack dog. My veil trembled, then shattered as something forced its way in. I sighed and drew my sword. I see, you're banking on the fact that your little manservant is a powerful vampire. I grinned, fine, I wanted a rematch anyways. 8 comments 0 vote, round der. Detlef crashed into the ground in front of me, shielding Sylvia from me. I hummed and observed the two of them. Rena, are you alright? Detlef asked, his voice surprisingly smooth. Rena, I see, she's probably manipulating him too. I'm alright my love, she nodded towards me, he has rejected our offer. Detlef turned towards me and frowned deeply, that was unwise. I was surprised to see his normal face, I had only seen his monstrous, vampire face, until now. Has anybody ever told you that you look like Hugh Jackman? I asked him. What? Sylvia looked at me as if I was stupid. Who? Detlef tilted his head to the side. I wasn't idle, I was pushing my cursed energy into my limbs. Making people think you were stupid ensured that they underestimated you. I didn't know how well that would work on Detlef since he knew some of my abilities. It still bought me time to prepare myself for a fight though. I was ready to cast a dismantle wave at the slightest movement from the two in front of me. Never mind, Did you know she's probably manipulating you? I asked Detlef, who looked at me with a frown. No, Rena and I share a bond, he replied. Behind him, Rena, Sylvia, or whatever her name was, looked like she was 1 second away from a panic attack. Rena, is that her name? She told me her name was Sylvia Anna. Curious, isn't it? Detlef looked confused. What? Look at her face. I pointed at her with my chin. He turned to face her and frowned. Rena, is this true? My love, I need to hide my identity. This infuriating man is working with our enemies. Detlef looked relieved, believing the obvious lie. Your manipulations will not work on me, boy. He glared at me. I sighed. Fine then, your funeral man. I got into a defensive stance. With a growl, Detlef's form shifted into something more beastly. His teeth turned into rows of fangs, his fingers transformed into foot-long claws. You must die now, boy, it's nothing personal. He growled through his inhuman maw. Sure feels personal. I flicked the fingers in my offhand. Detlef moved to dodge, only to freeze in place. I smirked. Seeing that he noticed my actual target, I launched a few more dismantles at the two of them, forcing Detlef to grab Sylvia and dodge. The invisible slashes shredded the cobblestone street and walls of the surrounding buildings in the alley. I rushed forward and slid under a slash from Detlef's claws. I retaliated by stabbing at the woman's leg. Detlef roared and slapped my sword away, only to receive a snap kick to the side that erupted with black lightning. The two flew into a wall. Detlef curled his body around Sylvia to protect her from the impact. Detlef can't see my slashes. Supernatural creatures can sense cursed energy though. Explains why he's able to dodge them if barely. I have to thank this woman for being such a burden to him that he has to either take my hits to protect her or allow her to be injured. Detlef emerged from the small crater he had created in the wall he and his lover had crashed into. He looked unharmed. Sylvia, on the other hand, had several bruises and scrapes. You wretch, you have no honor. Detlef growled through his fangs. Honor? Where was your honor when you butchered Delacroix? I didn't know the man for long, but for the 2 months I knew him as he trained me, he was nothing but kind. Detlef froze. Something like pain flashed across his face before his eyes hardened. I have already offered penance for that crime. I stabbed Dark Sister into the ground and leaned on it. Huh, so you admit it was a crime. Detlef looked conflicted. He glanced back at Sylvia and frowned. We're done here. What? She nearly shouted. He injured MS, kill him. She pointed at me. We are done here. Detlef enunciated each word before grabbing her and jumping onto a rooftop. Running away, it was just getting good. I called to the two of them. Pray our paths never cross again, boy. Detlef sighed, his voice clear as he shifted back to his human form. I very much doubt that this is the last time we'll meet you. I grinned cheekily. Detlef didn't respond. He and his lover vanished into the night. I released a breath that I didn't know I had been holding. Damn, that was tense. I muttered to myself. That wasn't how I was trained, not how I'd normally act when faced with aggressive confrontation. But it felt right. Maybe my new power was getting to my head, maybe I was just starting to have fun. Yeah, let's go with that, this is starting to be fun. Waking up in a new body, finding out I'm in some weird hentai death world crossover, then learning that I had the chance to get hilariously overpowered because I had lucked out in some sort of cosmic lottery. The last 2 months had been a mad dash to get strong enough to survive. Now I had the power. With RCT, killing me was nearly impossible unless my head gets blown off. I needed more strength before I went back, sure. That didn't mean I couldn't have fun now. I was strong enough to protect myself or escape now. It was time I started enjoying myself. I thought back to how Detlef reacted when I mentioned Delacroix. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Then there was that severed hand that belonged to a vampire. I have already offered penance for that crime. His words replayed themselves in my mind. It's safe to assume that he cut his own hand off. Not that it really mattered since it grew back, still, this complicates things. That woman was clearly manipulating Detlef. Which meant Regis was right, Detlef isn't doing this because he wants to murder people. She had a hand in everything. I wondered what those men had done to her to deserve such a fate. Whatever it was, it must have been pretty bad if that warranted manipulating a vampire to tear them apart. Fuck, Geralt and Regis will want this information. I came here to train, not to get involved in a convoluted revenge plot. I couldn't help but to think about the rewards for the quest though. It never mentioned that I needed to involve myself completely. I could just point Geralt and Regis in the right direction and jump in at the end to satisfy the objectives. Nodding to myself, I started walking back to Corvo Bianco. Scene break. I glanced at my status panel screen with a sigh. Name: Kentaro. Age: 18. Race: Title: Nah. Skills and perks: Photographic memory passive. Hybrid physiology passive. Divine Gacha active. Shrine active. Cursed energy manipulation active. Reverse curse technique active. Inventory: $199,931, 4,198,551 rubles. Rias Grimoires bathwater. Evil pieces 15/15. Cooked steak x 10. Jug of water x 5. Wine x 20. While the stuff I had in my inventory grew, I still couldn't make heads or tails of whatever hybrid physiology meant. I felt human, but I also felt something. Or at least, my CE sensed something inside me. It was like an itch I couldn't scratch. I tried everything from pulsing CE into that area, meditating and concentrating, trying to access it through sheer willpower alone. It didn't work. Nothing did. It didn't bother me too much though, so I focused to the task at hand. Geralt still hadn't returned. It had been nearly 2 weeks now since I had left him and Regis to their potion brewing. I wondered if he had actually gotten sidetracked by some random side contract. I briefly considered going back to the graveyard to see what the two old friends were up to. Then decided against it. I was busy enjoying everything Corvo Bianco had to offer. Wine, delicious food, and a great view of the countryside. A view I was currently trying to paint onto a blank canvas I had found in a storage closet. Barnabas, the majordomo that Anna Henrietta had assigned to the vineyard, had helped me source some oil-based paints. Let Geralt and Regis handle the legwork. They're more than enough to deal with whatever is up with Detlef and that shady woman. Sir Ken, there is a letter for you. Barnabas' voice came from behind me. I turned away from the easel. Come on BB, we've known each other for a week now. Just call me Ken. Barnabas Basil shook his head, a small smile on his plump face. It would be improper, sir. The Duchess has seen fit to knight you for your help in clearing out countless monster dens and bandit camps. I had been shocked at first. A day after the small confrontation with Detlef and that woman, Anna Henrietta had sent Palmerin de Launfal to bring me to her. Originally I thought that I had fucked up and was getting thrown in jail. I hadn't expected for the Duchess to knight me on the spot for my contributions in making the countryside safer. I had a feeling that Palmerin had a hand in it. He and Delacroix had been good friends and I had been Delacroix's last student before he had been killed. I accepted, making up a vow on the spot to protect the weak. Anna Henrietta had readily praised the vow before she started questioning me about what Geralt was up to and what my role in the investigation was. I was truthful. I told her that I didn't have a big role other than seeking justice for my teacher, and that I had absolutely no clue what the White Wolf was up to. She had told me to keep her informed about anything we learned. It seemed she had a personal stake in the investigation, more than just a ruler caring about her subjects at least. Who is it from? I asked Barnabas, taking the sealed parchment. The signet is unfamiliar to me, sir. Perhaps it's from Sir Geralt. He replied. I hummed. I don't think that old man is one to send letters. Barnabas gave a short bow of his head. Regardless, dinner will be ready in a few moments. Should I send for some servants to draw you a bath? Sure. I reached into my pocket and took out a few dozen florins. Here, if you could, send someone into town for cuts of lamb. I'm feeling lamb chops for lunch tomorrow. It will be done. Anything else? Nah, that's all. Thanks BB, I appreciate you. Barnabas smiled. It's my honor, Sir Ken. He took the florins and walked away with his hands clasped behind his back. I looked back to my nearly completed painting of the vineyard and sunset. I'll finish the painting, then I'll read this letter. I muttered. Scene break. I let out a frustrated hum once I finished reading the letter. It was from Regis. He explained that the seal he had pressed on the wax was Detlef's ring. The ring that had been on the severed hand. In the letter he described how he and Geralt had started brewing something he called a resonance potion, something that would let him basically see Detlef's memories as if they were his own. The potion required Detlef's flesh and blood. They had the hand available so it wasn't difficult. Then they also needed the spit glands from a spotted white. Regis informed me through the letter that Geralt claimed that the specific monster gland needed came from one that was extinct. Regis had said that Geralt had gone to hunt for alternatives. That had pretty much explained his disappearance for the last 2 weeks. I wondered if he had gotten sidetracked before or during the search. The letter had sounded concerned. Regis was worried that something had happened to Geralt during his search. After dinner, I informed Barnabas that I would be heading out to search for Geralt. The majordomo simply nodded and wished me luck. Then he provided me a pack of provisions for the road before I got on one of the horses that I had bought for the vineyard. I waved back casually as I rode out of Corvo Bianco towards Geralt's last known location. Regis explained that he had been watching Geralt through some birds and that the Witcher had disappeared after investigating a reportedly haunted abandoned estate. After almost 3 months in Tucson, I was familiar with most of the points of interest. I knew about the abandoned estate Geralt had been investigating. The locals had been perturbed by the countless spoons that hung from the trees around the estate. It took half a day to ride out to the villa. The air grew chilly and thick with despair the closer I got to the estate. My cursed energy practically sang with the amount of negative energy steeped into the land. Oh yeah, Definitely haunted if not cursed, maybe even both. I silently mused as I dismounted. Tying off my horse to a post just outside of the abandoned estate's walls, I drew Dark Sister and started walking towards the creepy-looking house not too far away. Along the way I noticed more and more spoons hanging from trees and posts. A few had fallen to the ground, leaving me wondering what sort of presents collected spoons. I spotted a few piles of glowing green goop. Some of the slimy piles had a canine-looking skull in them. Ghost dogs, I wondered. The air grew more tense as I got even closer to the apparent haunted property. I was starting to believe the rumors of it being haunted the more I saw. The floorboards creaked under my feet as I entered the darkened house through the cracked entryway. My senses sharp, I looked for any sign of Geralt. Regis, letter had been clear that Geralt had gone into the estate and vanished several days ago. Regis, bird friends had failed to spot him again after that. It's why Regis sent the letter to me. I sighed in relief when I heard Geralt's voice. It was coming from the floor below. I followed the sound down a flight of rickety stairs. I fought the urge to chuckle when I finally spotted Geralt. He was sitting on a chair across from an undead-looking creature. I didn't attack based on the fact that Geralt looked like he was having a cordial dinner party with the monster. Geralt, I spoke out for the first time. The monster let out a low hiss and turned its head towards me. Geralt raised his hand and stopped the monster as it had stood up from its seat to attack me. Wait, don't attack, he won't harm you. I quirked an eyebrow. The monster sat back down with some incomprehensible grumbling. Geralt looked at me, his face screaming, don't interfere. I sighed and leaned cautiously against the basement doorway as Geralt continued to speak to the monster. He was basically muttering to himself. I didn't think the monster understood him. Then the monster ladled out 2 bowls of viscous foul-looking soup. One bowl for Geralt, and the other for itself. I watched, waiting to see what Geralt had planned. 11 comments 0 vote, and suddenly, vampires. And what made you completely certain that the soup wouldn't kill you? Geralt looked at me as he rode next to me on Roach. I'm a witcher. Geralt, that's not an excuse. I'm pretty sure slightly toxic potions and a stew made out of God knows what are 2 very different things. Geralt shrugged, like actually shrugged. Well, I'm alive, and I've broken another curse. We glanced at the silent old lady that Geralt had sat in front of him on Roach's saddle. I was surprised when Geralt drank the foul-looking soup, but even more so when the spotted white screeched and ran off after drinking the second bowl of soup. Geralt and I took off after it, dealing with the ghost dogs that Geralt called bar guests along the way. We found the spotted white screeching under a gnarled tree when suddenly it started transforming. What was once a rather creepy zombie-looking monster became an old woman who looked as if she hadn't had sleep or food for decades. Geralt explained that his investigation on the haunted estate had led him to conclude that the spotted white was actually the cursed mistress of the estate. She had run afoul of some mirror merchant after not giving him food when he asked and had been cursed to turn into a monster that couldn't enjoy food. Geralt seemed to know something more, especially about the shady mirror salesman, but I didn't press. He was a professional monster hunter. There was no doubt that he had probably run into that merchant sometime in his travels. So what's the plan? I glanced at the Witcher. We go back to Corvo Bianco. I need a bath, and then I'll go find Regis. We should have everything to complete the potion now. Geralt replied. Sure, but what about her? I pointed to the old woman. Geralt looked pensive. She no longer has a family to turn to. Maybe she could stay in one of the spare rooms in the vineyard. Feeling charitable are we? I smirked at him. Geralt sighed. Please, I'm a professional. Scene break. We got back to Corvo Bianco much faster than when I rode out to get to where Geralt had been. I found it strange that the return journey is always faster than the travel time to reach a destination. Barnabas took everything in stride, ushering the old woman to a small building behind the main house of the vineyard. Geralt immediately had the servants draw a bath and stripped down to his skivvies. I went up the stairs to my bedroom and changed into sleepwear. Despite not having done much, riding for pretty much the whole day was tiring. Sleeping is part of training too. You can't recover properly if you don't sleep. Even if I used RCT to make my brain not feel tired, nothing will beat a good nap. I woke up the next morning to the smell of breakfast cooking. Downstairs the table was laden with thick-cut bacon, fried eggs, some sort of salad, a meat pie, fresh bread, butter, and fresh fruits. Quite a feast, I hummed. Geralt came out of his room wearing clean leather armor. He eyed the food then sat down while quietly eating some bread and cheese. Good morning, sirs. Please, sit and break your fast. Marlene was a great help in preparing this spread, Barnabas said as he came in from the kitchen. The old woman from the other day smiled softly next to him. I hummed and sat down, piling my plate high with egg, bacon, and buttered bread. Come on, join us, BB, I waved to the majordomo. The food you've made is excellent as always and there's plenty for everyone. Barnabas looked hesitant at first but then joined Geralt and I at the table. The older woman also sat at the table and began to eat. We ate in comfortable silence, enjoying the meal. After finishing up my plate, I grabbed some bacon, bread and cheese before standing up. Gonna ride out to the tourney grounds today. Been meaning to check it out, heard most of the knights would gather there. Geralt nodded. Good idea, you can keep an eye on them there. I need to go back and speak with Regis. Alright, don't forget to send for me if you two need help. I waved at him as I walked out. Barnabas sent a servant to saddle my horse but I stopped him. The tournament grounds weren't that far off and I felt like walking. I looked around in quiet wonder when I arrived at the tournament grounds. Nearly 3 months in this world and I hadn't bothered coming here. There was no reason for it really. I was too busy training and making sure that I could survive. I still wasn't at a level where I could comfortably return to my world yet, but I was strong enough to defend myself or run away if I came across an enemy that was too strong for me. At the moment I just wanted to enjoy myself, so enjoy myself I did. I checked out the food vendors outside of the strange arena, eating some skewers of meat and vegetables while browsing the few smithing shops set up further into the grounds. There were a few swords and armor pieces that caught my eye, but none of them were better than Dark Sister. I still bought a few daggers though. I discreetly stashed them away in my inventory when no one was paying attention. A few backup weapons never hurt, and I wanted to see if I could bootleg my own version of a Gate of Babylon. When the sun was at its peak height in the sky and it got a little too hot, I found some shade in the Colosseum and watched a few of the tournament events. I didn't know the specifics of what was going on, but dudes in armor beating the shit out of each other was never not entertaining. When I made it back to Corvo Bianco hours later, the sun was beginning to dip down towards the horizon. Geralt had already left, leaving Barnabas and the old woman from the other day, Marlene, alone making a small meal. I joined in for a bit, eating a small bowl of venison stew and a nice warm loaf of bread before retiring upstairs. I washed my face and arms in a small basin of water before laying in bed. Life's a little domestic now, not that I'll complain. I closed my eyes and went to bed, only to be woken up by the sound of Geralt calling my name. I blinked at him, my vision a little blurry from sleep. What the fuck do you want? I grumbled. I've never been one to like getting woken up instead of waking naturally. There's an issue. I sighed and sat up. What happened? I started putting my boots on as Geralt explained. I listened intently to what he said, my eyes narrowing as I began to understand what had happened while I was at the tournament grounds. Regis was right. Detlef isn't killing random people. There's a pattern, old retired knights. Yeah, I figured, ran into him a few nights ago while you were playing house with a white. What? Sorry, totally forgot to tell you the other day. Some woman, called herself Sylvia, Detlef knew her as Rena though. Was following me and when I confronted her, she summoned Detlef by cutting her own hand. Geralt frowned. That complicates things. Regis and I learned that Detlef is being blackmailed into killing certain targets. Apparently they have captured his lover. Clearly they haven't. This woman, shady as she is a master manipulator. She's got Detlef twisted around her finger. Though, I wonder why he wasn't so shocked to see her if she had apparently been kidnapped. Geralt mulled over my words. We need to go speak with Henrietta, there's something I need to confirm. Think this woman is connected to the Duchess? Not sure yet, clearly all the killings have been targeted to knights of the duchy. Figures, fine, let me go get my cloak. I sighed. Scene break. I stifled a yawn as Geralt and I rode at a sedate pace towards the palace. The ride was silent, something I appreciated, especially after having been woken up so early in the morning. Are you sure I even need to be here, G-Man? I asked, looking at Geralt sleepily. Don't call me that, and yes, Henrietta might need you to explain to her what you told me. I sighed. I had told Geralt exactly what had happened when I confronted Detlef and his lover. A strange look crossed his face when I mentioned that the woman had called herself Sylvia Anna. As we drew closer to the palace a pair of ducal guards stopped us. One of them nodded to me in acknowledgement. Anna Henrietta, having spread the news of my recent knighthood, offered me some respect with the locals. Geralt spoke to them. I didn't bother to listen in. I was too busy trying to piece together who that shady woman was. Clearly a noble, with connections to the duchy, specifically 3 older knights. Soon we found ourselves in front of Anna Henrietta, who looked like she had gotten dragged out of bed too. Geralt gave a short bow with his head. I mirrored the Witcher with one of my own. I hope you bring me some news worthy of waking me up at an ungodly hour, Geralt. The Duchess's tone was clipped, her accented voice carrying some irritation. We do, my lady. Geralt nodded to me. I rolled my eyes at him. Lady Duchess, I confronted a woman a few days ago. She seemed to be the one controlling the beast that has been killing your people. Anna Henrietta frowned. This is troubling news. You did not stop her, Sir Ken. I shook my head. She summoned the beast once I made a move to capture her. While I am strong, I do not delude myself into thinking that I could have fought the beast and come out unharmed. What more, I spoke with the beast. He does the things he's done unwillingly. Anna Henrietta turned to Geralt. Troubling news indeed. What else have you learned, Witcher? A name, Geralt replied. The beast calls her Rena, but she introduced herself to Ken by another, Sylvia Anna. At that Anna Henrietta froze. It cannot be. I hummed, taking in the Duchess's growing shock. I gathered that she must know the woman if that name garnered such a reaction from her. My lady, a guard stepped forward. Geralt glanced at me, expression level. I could see that he had realized something though. Anna Henrietta spoke quickly and quietly. The guard who had come up to her nodded before rushing off. What is it? Is that name familiar to you? I asked her. Anna Henrietta took a deep breath before nodding her head. It is Sir Ken, the name of my sister. Huh, I guess they do look similar. Diana's hair black and they'd look identical. Sister? Geralt asked. Sylvia Anna, or Cyanna. My sister, she was exiled. The reason? A curse. At least our parents and their council believed so. You see, she was born under a bad omen, the curse of the Black Sun. Geralt hummed, so she has returned to exact revenge then. Perhaps on the men that exiled her or even her former guards that did nothing as she was cast out of her home. That'd make sense. I knew it was a fucking revenge plot. Anna Henrietta looked to be deep in though. I can see it now, the 3 knights that have been murdered so far. They were, or used to be Cyanna's former guard detail. It's not hard to see why she'd feel hate towards them, if they did nothing as she was exiled. But I fail to see why she'd have them killed. They were just following orders at the end of the day. I mused. Geralt replied instead of Anna Henrietta. To my surprise, she doesn't see it that way, more than likely she saw it as them betraying her. To have stood by and let her be exiled when their jobs were to protect her. I hummed, sure, but I still think she's overreacting. Anna Henrietta shook her head. My sister has always been vindictive. Even when we were children. So what now? I asked. Thank you for this information, Sir Ken. Geralt, you have given me much to think about. My men will see you out. I shall call for you at a later time. Geralt nodded. I followed him out of the palace. So, exiled princess returns to her kingdom to seek revenge. What are the chances she's going to target her sister next? Hi, Geralt replied in his gruff voice. Should we let the ducal guard know? Not much they can do, but a warning would give them some time to prepare. Geralt hummed. Sure, I'll leave that to you then. Gonna go back to the vineyard and get some more sleep. Geralt didn't stop me when I mounted my horse and rode off. Scene break. I woke up hours later and yawned the last dregs of sleep away from my body. Stretching my arms over my head, I got out of bed and padded downstairs to grab a bite to eat. It was dark already. I figured I had slept for much longer than I thought. The house was seemingly empty. Grabbing an apple and a loaf of bread, I stepped outside directly into chaos. I heard screams in the distance and cursed. I quickly finished my apple and ran back inside the house to put my boots on. What the fuck happened? I rushed back outside, sword already drawn as I looked around. The city looked like it was on fire in the distance. The smell of blood clung to the air. I whistled sharply, calling my horse over to me. I hopped onto the saddle and rode as fast as I could towards the city. I passed by a few corpses along the way, my eyes catching the various injuries. Some had been clawed, others had their throats torn out, all of them drained of blood. Fuck, a black blur tackled me off my horse. I punched the shape away before it could take me to the ground. I flipped gracefully through the air and landed in a crouch. Oi, that's fucking rude, you know. I glared at the cloaked figure that tackled me. The figure's cloak dropped to the ground as if the one wearing it had disappeared from inside it. I ducked as I felt the air behind me shift unnaturally. Just in time too, as clawed hands swiped through where my head had been moments earlier. TCH, a vampire. I eyed the shimmering shape. I don't have time for you. I flicked my fingers out. The vampire didn't have time to screech as it was shredded instantly. Its invisibility failed as it flopped onto the ground. Its monstrous features melted away, shifting back into the nude form of an attractive woman. Another Bruxa then. I kicked at the corpse's leg, making sure that it was dead. Moving towards my horse, I got back on and spurred it towards the city again. A little more hesitant, it took some coaxing, but I was eventually riding towards Toussaint once more. 7 comments 0 vote. Save my sister R18. I had dismounted nearly an hour ago, sending my horse away as I charged headfirst into Toussaint. Corpses littered the street like leaves, making my stomach churn. There were a few vampire stragglers that jumped me at every corner. Dark Sister was drawn, dripping vampiric blood as I jogged through the streets looking for survivors. Luckily many people had managed to barricade themselves into their homes. The few that didn't had been torn apart by the horde of vampires attacking the city. I managed to rally a few ducal guards. They followed close behind me as I went from street to street looking for survivors. The few that I found were being escorted to a fallback point. Pierre, take these last few civilians to the safe zone. Take Antonin with you. I called out as I pulled a woman and her husband out from behind a burning stall. The woman was crying hysterically while her husband tried to comfort her. He had a few cuts on his face and he was favoring his right arm. But sir, no questions, we need to get as many people to safety as we can. The ducal guard looked hesitant at first, but his comrade pulled him along. They gently urged the couple away as I glanced around the market square. A few days ago this place was filled with people and merchants peddling their wares. Can't get sidetracked, gotta find Geralt then make my way to the palace. That's probably where the vampires will head to next. I wiped Dark Sister clean on the hem of my cloak before sheathing it at my waist. Looking around to make sure I was clear, I enhanced my limbs with CE and jumped up onto a rooftop. From above, I could see the extent of the carnage spread through the city. I jumped across the rooftops, dispatching vampires I ran across with a generous helping of dismantle waves. Slowly but surely, I made my way to the palace where I spotted a small army of guards holding the front gates. A few injured townsfolk huddled around the gates being tended to by those in better condition. I landed with a loud thump, scaring a few civilians and causing the guards to draw their weapons only to lower them when they noticed me. Is the Duchess safe? I asked quickly. She is, Sir Geralt is with her in the palace. A guard replied. I nodded in thanks and set off again. What the fuck happened? Did Deadlift do this or was this Sylvia's doing? I hope Geralt has a better understanding of what's going on. Scene break. I burst through the doors of the palace, my eyes scanning the room until I found Geralt speaking hurriedly with Anna Henrietta. Geralt, what the fuck is going on? Regis stepped out from a side room looking none too pleased. I'm afraid it's Deadlift, he has gone mad. What? I glanced at him. Anna Henrietta cut in. Sir Ken, the Witcher and his friend have informed me that they confronted the beast with the information you had brought me the other day. My sister fled as the Witcher confronted him. I turned to Geralt who looked troubled. I didn't think he'd react this way. Damn it, I cursed. So this was Deadlift then? Unfortunately so. Regis sighed. How bad is it out there? Henrietta glanced at me, clearly bracing herself for the bad news. It's gone to hell, Duchess. Bodies lay in the streets. I killed maybe a dozen vampires on my way here. There's many more out there, I replied. Anna Henrietta gasped, then turned to Geralt. Witcher, this is in part your doing, please save my kingdom. Kinda weird to insult him in one breath then ask him to save her people the next. Oh well, can't be easy being a Witcher as famous as Geralt. Geralt looked mildly annoyed before nodding and stepping out followed by Regis. Anna Henrietta glanced at the remaining guards in the room before waving her hand. Leave us. The ducal guards did not hesitate. They nodded once before stepping out leaving me alone with the Duchess. Duchess, do you need something? I asked her. She lets out a deep sigh. Please, just call me Anna. Right then, Anna, what's on your mind? She plopped herself down on a seat in a way that could make you forget that she was technically royalty. She held a hand towards another seat next to hers. Please, sit Ken, thanks. My sister, is a complicated matter. She started. I loved her as a sister should. Then she just disappeared one day. I did not learn of what happened to my dear sister until I was much older. Do you hold resentment for your mother and father for what they did? She hummed. It is comforting that you speak to me so casually. And no, while a part of me once did, what they did kept peace in the kingdom. Even if I do not put much weight behind prophecy and mysticism. The people of Toussaint are a superstitious bunch. They would have lynched my sister. So you see it as a mercy. That she was exiled from the only home she had ever known. No, there was no real need to exile her. She could have stayed, we could have hidden her away. But what's done is done. I must ask you, why do you do so much for my kingdom? I do not believe for one second that it is just as simple as you say. At the start, I arrived here unable to hold a sword properly. Much less, fight anything and survive. I may not have lived here for years but this place has given me so much. It's only fair that I help defend it. Truly noble. Anna Henrietta smiled at me. Come, let us go for a walk. You realize that your town is still under attack, yes? She shook her head. The sounds of fighting have ended. I believe that the Witcher and that vampire friend of his have resolved the conflict. Now come, walk with me. I sighed. As you wish. Scene break. I don't know how I ended up in this position but I wasn't going to complain. People dealt with grief in strange ways. Anna Henrietta tore at my clothes with lustful hunger as we kissed hard. We stumbled into a spare room in the palace. I kissed her back with matching heat. Our tongues fought for dominance as I ripped the top of her dress to expose her cleavage. She gasped deliciously as I kissed her exposed flesh. Her fingers twisted through my hair as she held my head to her chest. She pushed me back and in a surprising display of skill, stripped out of her outer dress leaving her in her chemise and hose. Then she crashed into me, her fingers fumbling with my sword belt. And then they fuck. YT gonna ban my ass if I put R18 shit. Scene break. I must have dozed off for a moment after Anna and I had done that. When I woke up, I was alone in the room. Anna had disappeared with her clothes. Mine had been folded neatly and laid at the foot of the bed. I sighed and got up, dressing quietly and as quick as I could. I put my sword belt back on and cautiously peeked out of the room. Spotting no one, I stepped cautiously out of the room and slowly closed the door behind me. I hope you weren't planning on just leaving without another word. I turned around slowly. Anna had appeared behind me with a small smirk. Right, sorry about that. She shook her head with a small smile on her lips. Think nothing of it, come with me. It's time for that walk I offered you. I chuckled, are we going to go find another empty room? Her lips quirked upward, there are plenty of empty rooms in this palace. I see. She shook her head, but no, I wish to apologize for taking advantage of my poor naive self. She laughed, naive, I think not, you seem rather experienced in satisfying the fairer sex, Sir Ken. I followed her as we walked around the palace. She gave me a brief tour of her home. Along the way she stole quick glances at me before explaining some detail about a painting or whatever else we passed by. It wasn't until we reached the courtyard when she turned to face me. Ken, I know you're not a simple man. What brought that along? I asked her. You appeared in my kingdom several weeks ago. I've had a few of my men keep watch of you, to see if you were some kind of threat to my kingdom. I am glad that you aren't. Spies, can't say I'm surprised. I was pretty sure I saw the same guard walk past my room at the inn 3 nights in a row. I apologize for the subterfuge, but now that I know I can trust you, I am afraid that I must ask you for a selfish favor. What is it? Save my sister. 7 comments 0 vote. STFU bozo. Save my sister. Easier said than done. I didn't know the first place to start. According to Geralt, Sylvia had disappeared after Detlef's vampire minions attacked Tucson. Anna and I parted ways after our brief conversation in the courtyard. She had given me a chaste kiss before walking away in a hurried pace. She hadn't even given me the chance to reply. I replayed what had happened in my head a few times. Okay, I maybe replayed what had happened more than a few times. I returned to Corvo Bianco and took a long warm bath. Still thinking about what happened. Yikes, who knew I was so pent up? I silently mused. To be fair, I was 18 years old again. I remembered how horny I was when I was 18 for the first time in my past life. Oh shit, she was my first in this life. I sank lower in the tub, thinking about the implications of what happened. I had fucked the Duchess. I had done the horizontal hula with literal royalty in a medieval fantasy world. I rose up out of the water and dried myself off on a towel. Dressing quickly, I put on my sword belt again and rode out to the graveyard. It was where I was hoping Geralt would be. If I was going to find Sylvia, he was my best bet. My horse galloped past massive pyres. The vampire bodies had been gathered up and had been burning for a while now. A smaller pyre was reserved for the townsfolk that were too mangled to identify or even put back together. I respectfully stayed silent. Part of me was annoyed that I had been busy getting laid instead of trying to save more people. When I finally reached the graveyard that was Regis' hideout, I was relieved to see Geralt and the aforementioned vampire speaking by the mausoleum that served as the entrance to Regis' lab. Geralt, Regis, I'm glad I caught up before you two left. Geralt nodded my way while Regis offered a wave. Ken, what's wrong? Nothing. Figured I'd tag along with whatever you have planned. Anna wants me to save her sister. You two are my best chance at finding her. You're more than welcome to come along, the more the merrier, I always said. Regis replied. Anna, Geralt gave me a teasing smirk. Shut it, old man, I don't want to hear a damn thing from you about my love life. I scoffed, ignoring his chuckle. Who said anything about a love life? Geralt did the equivalent of a grin for a witcher. At that point, Regis was chuckling too. I flipped both of them the bird and got back on my horse. Scene break. So where are we going exactly? I asked, as we sat on a small rowboat. Some ruins my people left behind when we first ended up in this world. Regis replied solemnly. I almost forgot that monsters weren't native to this world. What are we doing there? We're paying a visit to the unseen. We may be able to summon Detlef there. Regis answered. Geralt continued rowing the boat until we came to a small island. I mulled over Regis' cryptic answer. The unseen. Logic pointed towards some sort of hidden being. I could only guess that it was another powerful vampire. One potentially stronger than Detlef. Please, when we arrive, be respectful. The unseen elder is not the most patient of my species. Regis added as we disembarked. Just let me do the speaking. Geralt chimed in. I nodded to him. Got it, I'll keep an eye out then. We came to a stop in front of a large slab of stone. Regis muttered something silently before cutting his hand and smearing the blood on the stone. The slab vanished, revealing a dark cavern. We followed the cavern until we came to a pool of water and a raised outcrop. I could see that the cavern extended further in. One path was submerged in water, the other path continued above in the raised section. Well, do we split up? I asked. No, Geralt replied before running and nimbly scaling up to the raised section. After you, Regis motioned. I shrugged and followed the route Geralt took, accepting his hand up when I reached the ledge. The Witcher pulled me up and I turned to Regis, who simply did the weird mist thing that Detlef did and appeared next to us. Shall we continue? The vampire seemed smug. Continuing further into the cave system, I watched as Geralt swiftly dealt with a lower vampire he called a Felder. After that we moved further in until we came to a fork. So another ledge, or one with a mysteriously lit torch, kinda obvious if you ask me. I hummed. We go forward, stay here Ken, just in case something goes wrong. Sure, just scream if you need my help. Geralt didn't rise to my taunt, he and Regis went towards the opening with the lit torch. I kicked at the rocks and glanced around the cavernous room. Curiosity got the better of me and I looked towards the ledge. Maybe there's good loot there. There's always loot in places like this. I jumped up onto the ledge and spotted a large chest. Bingo, I whispered with a smile. I opened the chest slowly and frowned. There wasn't much inside it. Just a pair of red gauntlets and a sword. The sword looked wickedly sharp, a red gleam along its edge. The blade itself looked pretty badass too, slender with a twisted steel hand guard that looked like it was forged from the same metal as the blade. The grip was wrapped with leather, dyed a bright red like freshly spilled blood. The pommel was a simple ring of metal that balanced the sword perfectly in my hand. Not bad. If I ever learned to dual wield, this would definitely be a good complementary sword to Dark Sister. I think I'll name it Dusk. I stashed it in my inventory and checked its flavor text. Hengate steel sword, part of a set of ancient vampiric armor. When worn with the rest of the set will drain opponent's vitality with each strike by 5% with each piece worn. I checked the gauntlets that I also stashed in my inventory with the sword. Hengate gauntlets, part of a set of ancient vampiric armor, when worn with the rest of the set. The gauntlets and the sword had the same flavor text word for word. I figured that the rest of the set was scattered deeper in the cave system that this unseen elder inhabited. Just as I hopped down from the ledge I heard a shout and a loud crash. I drew Dark Sister and rushed down the tunnel that Geralt and Regis had gone through. Arriving at a larger cave I slid to a stop. Geralt was held aloft by what looked like a sickly old man wearing some sort of skirt. The old man had strange tattoos on his chest and his claws were raised to stab Geralt in the chest. Without thinking I threw Dark Sister at the old man, making him drop Geralt and vanish. I grinned when I saw the blur shooting towards me. A month ago I would have pissed myself and died. Now, after awakening my full potential, I had a fighting chance. The unseen elder was faster than Detlef, but I could still see him. I summoned Dusk from my inventory and blocked a swipe of his claws. Behind him, Geralt scrambled to his feet drawing his silver blade. I leave you alone for 1 second, I clicked my tongue as I dodged another slash by a hair's breadth. Shut up and help me fight. Geralt growled. What do you think I'm doing, genius? I retorted. Regis was nowhere in sight. I wondered where the eccentric vampire had gone off to. I hissed in pain as the unseen elder's claws raked across my arm, nearly making me drop my sword. The pain vanished in an instant with an application of RCT. My healing seemed to have caught the unseen elder by surprise. I kicked him in the chest hard and flicked my sword across his face. The elder growled when my sword drew a thin red line across his brow. Smirking, I rolled beneath a slash that was aimed at my throat. For a brief moment, Geralt and I danced around the unseen elder, landing blow after blow, infuriating the ancient vampire. The ancient vampire roared, enough. The cave shook a little, but I wasn't fazed. This bastard thought he was hot shit. He was probably the type to act bored and nonchalantly when really he was super chalant and cringe. The unseen elder moved faster than before, booting Geralt through an opening in the cavernous room. Geralt let out a shout as he fell. Moments later there was a loud splash of water. You mortal worm, I shall savor you blow. Shut the fuck up, bozo. You'll be the first to witness my unfinished domain. I had been working on it non-stop since my second encounter with Detlef. I had made some progress but nowhere near what I wanted. I stabbed Dusk into the ground and raised my hands into a hand sing. Middle and ring fingers steepled, pointer and little fingers curled inwards. The unseen elder seemed unconcerned, until my voice echoed through the cave. Domain expansion. Hell, the name was a work in progress. Honestly, I wasn't very good with names. It'll probably come to me eventually, maybe. An aura of sheer bloodlust erupted from my feet as I pushed my inner world out into reality. That was the true essence of a domain expansion. My domain, despite carrying a similar name in general, aura, as Sukuna's, was unique to me. Instead of a shrine, skulls, and a bloody sea, my domain was absolute hell. A darkened sky, a blood-red moon looming over red earth. Blazing red flames danced in a ring around the unseen elder and I. My heart was beating out of my chest in excitement. This was the furthest I had gotten at imposing my domain into reality. Die! I thrust my hands out at the ancient vampire. The vampire roared and tried to break out of my domain expansion. It wouldn't have been hard, all he had to do was step out of the ring of fire. Unfortunately, I targeted his legs first. Thousands of slashes rained down on the unseen elder, turning him into a fine paste. I wasn't done yet though. I channeled even more cursed energy into my technique. The ring of fire rose higher until it coalesced into a fireball the size of a horse. The fireball crashed into the writhing remains of the ancient vampire. There was one final screech as the unseen elder was atomized by divine flames. My domain finally shattered as my CE reserves dropped to dangerous levels. I felt a warm trickle slip down my lip. A wipe from my hand revealed that I had a bloody nose. Still, I had done the impossible. Regis had claimed that nothing could kill a higher vampire except for another higher vampire. I started chuckling, then the chuckling turned into full-blown laughter. Then the laughter died out into coughs as Geralt came back, soaking wet and looking miserable. Ah, Geralt, there you are. I hope you got everything you needed out of the unseen elder cause I just turned him into a pile of ashes. Geralt looked absolutely done with my bullshit. Scene break. What exactly are you? Regis asked. The vampire had emerged from wherever he had slunk off to after Geralt grabbed some ash from the unseen elder. The urge to reply with, "I'm just built different," was really tempting. Seeing the look on his face though, made me reconsider. You might as well hear this, Geralt. I figured it's time I stopped keeping secrets. Geralt scooted closer to the fire I had built with the unseen elder's remains and a few dry logs I kept in my inventory. Like your species, Regis, I'm not from this world. Geralt hummed. I figured, I can sense your magic, or your signs as you called them. It feels different from the kind of magic here. I nodded. I traveled to this world to grow stronger. What I am is called a jujutsu sorcerer back in my home world. Do you have the elder blood? Geralt suddenly asked. Huh, elder blood, the blood of Nevermind, it's an ability that lets those that carry it travel through different worlds. Geralt spoke. Huh, I'm not sure, maybe. I wasn't going to tell them everything, of course, that would be stupid. That was probably the #1 unspoken rule in all isekai. Never tell anyone you're an isekai character. How did you kill the elder? Regis asked, steering the conversation back to the original topic. I suppose you're right in saying that nothing can kill a high vampire except for another higher vampire. Regis nodded, then I continued. Though I think most creatures would find it difficult to survive after being rendered down into meat paste then burnt to ashes by fire. Regis sighed. No, I suppose not. I have experienced something similar at one point. I remember you mentioning it, that one twat, Vilgebord or something. Regis smiled at what I said. Vilgeforts, he corrected, and the mage used some kind of white flames that tore my body apart and fused me into a stone column. Who cares what his name is, also yikes. That must have sucked, especially if you were conscious until Detlef rescued you as you said. Regis could only nod. Indeed, I was aware of everything. I shuddered. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. What now? Geralt asked, his tone carrying exhaustion. Well, I flambate the unseen elder, so unless there's another way to call Detlef, then we need to find something else to get his attention. I sighed. Fuck. Geralt sighed. We could go seek out Sylvia ourselves. Regis suggested. How? Simple. We ask her sister. Regis grinned at me. Why are you looking at me? I glanced at the two of them. 11 comments 0 vote. Reunion. I outright refused to help Geralt and Regis with Anna Henrietta and Sylvia. Mainly because I was still avoiding the Duchess. I also stayed behind to raid the cave system for every bit of loot I could get my hands on. It took a few hours but I managed to find every piece of the Hengaith armor set. It looked kinda similar to Dracula's armor from the movie where Gary Oldman rizzed up Jonathan Harker's fiancée. I returned to the entrance of the cave system and frowned. The boat was gone. Those fucking cunts. I cursed as I looked for a way off the island. I had a feeling they stranded me on purpose. I sat down by the water's edge and sighed. Well, I guess there's no better time to look at the notification I had gotten after turning that elder vampire into a burnt chicken nugget. I had received a notification earlier but chose to ignore it to soak in the feeling of victory. Then I had gotten sidetracked when I explained my powers to Geralt and Regis. Congratulations, you have slain a mighty foe, the unseen elder, an ancient vampire who none could match, until you came along. For your achievements you have earned 3x Gacha draws. 3 draws this time, hell yeah. I immediately used the draws and waited patiently for my rewards. Mjolnir. MCU Legendary. The legendary hammer of Thor Odinson, being made out of pure Uru metal it can channel magic. The worthiness enchantment that Odin wove into this weapon is still active. Those who the hammer deems worthy will be blessed with all of Thor's abilities. Host can wield Mjolnir regardless of worthiness. Elder blood, Witcherverse mythic. Ancient elves coveted this blood for the sheer power that it granted its bearers. The Hen chair grants unparalleled magical might as well as the power to traverse time and space. Resurrection stone, Harry Potter mythic. One of 3 deathly hallows. This unassuming pebble grants its holder the ability to call upon the spirit of the dead to commune with them. Those called upon by the stone are bound to the will of the holder, however staying for too long in the land of the living causes the spirit pain. Holy shit, yes, fuck yes, gimme the fucking loot baby. Then I nearly passed out as my body was filled with pain like I had never felt before. My vision went white, I felt as if my blood was being replaced with hydrochloride acid. I thrashed around on the ground trying not to scream. Then the pain vanished, like it was just a hallucination. I felt incredible, my CE was singing. Now I had more than I had ever thought I would ever have. My reserves felt like it had jumped nearly 100 levels. Panting I startled laughing, the feeling of power was intoxicating. I felt something click in my head as if a puzzle piece had fallen into place. I understand it now, teleportation. I glanced at the distant shore and focused, not even all that hard. I reappeared where I was looking in a flare of greenish blue light. I stumbled a bit but I was laughing, with this power I could go wherever I wanted. I took out Mjolnir from my inventory, the hammer slamming into the ground with a thump as I dropped it. Such a satisfying sound. Hee hee, I've always wanted to try this. I picked it up again, it weighed nearly nothing in my hands. Looking around I checked my surroundings before thrusting it up into the sky. A bolt of lightning struck the hammer and surged down my arm and into my body. A wide grin split my face as more power filled my body. Even as scaled armor and a red cape assembled on my body I was already spinning the hammer. Then I let go of the loop I was using to spin it while quickly grasping its leather-wrapped handle. I was launched up into the clouds, I whooped with excitement. I flew through the evening sky. I found that I didn't need to spin the hammer again while I was in the sky, I simply just willed it to travel in another direction and it would obey my command. I flew around for a few moments before I decided to land. I dismissed the hammer back to my inventory and hummed when the power that I felt while holding it vanished. Still, nothing could hold back my excitement as I teleported back to Corvo Bianco and kicked the door in with a happy shout. I'm Bach. Scene break. I apologized to Barnabas profusely for shattering the door with my new strength. Note to self, the hammer boosts my magic and physical strength. Without it, only the physical strength boost remains. I also mentally noted that I'd need to start getting used to my new power level because I wasn't about to go breaking shit because my control was garbage. Barnabas and Marlene had taken the other workers and servants down to the cellars to hide when the vampires attacked Beauclair, though it wasn't really needed as they only attacked the town and not the surrounding vineyards. Marlene made me a quick late-night dinner that I inhaled after taking a quick bath. Thanking the two again, I left a large sack of gold before leaving to find Geralt and set Mjolnir down on his foot for leaving me on the island. In a flash of blue light, I reappeared in the courtyard to the palace. My arrival drew the attention of a few guards who went back to their posts when they saw that it was just me. Sir Ken, a voice called to me. A guard ran up to me looking happy. Pierre Wright. I remembered the guard who I had sent off with a couple that I had rescued during the vampire attack. It gladdens me to see you well, sir. What has brought you here? Looking for the Duchess. Have you seen her? Pierre hummed. Duchess Anna Henrietta took the Witcher to her private study. All right, thanks Pierre. I waved as I ran towards the palace. Wait, no time buddy, I have an old man to teach a lesson to. Old man, I burst through the doors louder than intended, but I didn't break them this time. Anna Henrietta was pacing around the room while Geralt stood stiffly. The two glanced at me in surprise as I rushed into the room. Ken, what how? I glared at Geralt, then I turned to Anna. My gaze softening when I saw the look on her face. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I'll deal with you later. I pointed at Geralt. We were just about leave, we have found a lead on my sister. Anna Henrietta said. What's the lead? I asked. Regis found something in a house by the bank. He believes it may lead us to Sienna. Geralt replied. I hummed, is it one of her hideouts? It matters not, come, we must hurry. Anna started walking out of the room. Geralt and I trailed behind her. I sped up a little until I was keeping in step with her. What will you do when we find her? She glanced at me. I do not know, she has caused so much pain yet she is still my sister. I guess we shall see. Have you been getting enough rest? I changed the subject. She looked annoyed at first, then a soft smile formed on her lips. I thank you for worrying about me, however, I shall rest when we have found my sister. Anna, we're so close Ken, she muttered as we kept walking. She waved away any guards looking to escort her as we made our way out of the palace. We walked out into the street with Geralt taking the lead while I kept most of the local populace from getting too close to Anna. We eventually came to a half-burnt home where Regis was standing outside waiting for our arrival. "Geralt, Ken, you've made it. I see you brought the Duchess." He shot me a quick look before turning to Geralt. "I've already taken the liberty of unlocking the doors. Feel free to enter whenever you wish." Geralt thanked Regis and stepped into the home. Most of the furniture was intact, if not strewn around like the home's previous occupants tried to barricade the door. "My medallion's humming," Geralt grumbled. "Magic?" I asked. Upstairs," Geralt confirmed with a grunt. There was another room up the stairs. The room was less chaotic than the rest of the house. I noted various knickknacks and odds and ends. Geralt stood in front of a locked wardrobe. He tried opening it but the doors wouldn't budge. "Locked. Must be a key around here somewhere," he hummed. I drew Dark Sister and stepped forward. Geralt backed away. I stabbed the lock and twisted. There was a screech of metal being torn before I drew back my sword and sheathed it. Geralt pulled the door open to reveal a book. Anna Henrietta stepped forward and picked it up. She read the title out loud. "A Land of a Thousand Fables." I wondered where this went. Sienna and I played within its world when we were children. I could sense magic in the book, seeing that Anna Henrietta picked it up with no problem. I wasn't too worried. Then she cracked the book open and magic washed over the three of us. Geralt instantly drew his sword while I pulled Anna behind me. Anna stepped around me, her eyes filled with wonder and a bit of nostalgia. "It still works," she whispered. "Nothing has changed." "What is this?" Geralt asked. "I sense a powerful illusion." "It is an illusionary world crafted by Artorius Vigo. He was a powerful mage, and our uncle. He made this world so that Sienna and I had a safe place to play." Anna explained. "This is some powerful magic." I looked around. It all felt real. If I didn't have cursed energy augmenting my senses, I doubted that I would be able to tell that it was an illusion. "Indeed, come, I believe that it is my turn to guide us now. If my sister is hiding here, then I know where to find her." The thing with magic is that it requires constant upkeep, at least as far as enchantments go. And what is a massive illusion that you could interact with if not just a complex enchantment? The fairytale land was beautiful. It was like seeing through my 6-year-old self's eyes again. Everything was vibrant, full of color. The air practically glittered while the water was clear and shimmering. Anna Henrietta led us down the yellow brick road. That's where things started to go wrong. Geralt was attacked by some weird plant monster. I held back to protect Anna, but really it was payback. I had to hold back some laughter when the weird flower monster shot Geralt in the ass with a massive thorn. After that, Geralt had incinerated the monster with a Witcher sign. Anna looked shocked that something had attacked us. Geralt then explained to her that the illusionary world had probably destabilized due to neglect. Anna was saddened by this news, but who wouldn't? I'd be pretty bummed out if a childhood memory of mine was twisted into something kids definitely shouldn't be around. We eventually came to a hut where a familiar woman was frantically banging on the door to an iron oven. "Sienna," Anna Henrietta called out before shoving past Geralt and I. "Sister, what are you doing here?" I came to find you." Anna pulled Sylvia into a hug much to my surprise. "Reunion can wait, we have company." Geralt drew his sword as cackling filled the hut. "They're having a moment, damn it." I drew my sword too, just as an honest-to-God witch burst through the roof. Green skin, hooked nose, pointy black hat. The witch swooped over our heads on her broom. Geralt swiped at the witch only to miss, making her cackle louder. Geralt tried casting a sign, only for the gout of flames to deflect off of a shimmering shield. The witch seemed to laugh at him directly before smacking him across the chest with her broom. Geralt was launched out of the hut. I stood in front of the sisters and glared at the witch. She flew at me, still laughing hysterically. I summoned Mjolnir to my hand and threw it. It collided with the witch's broom, swerving mid-air as the witch tried to dodge it. "Parry this, you filthy casual," I spat out. The witch let out a screech as she crashed into the ground clutching her shattered broomstick. I raised my hand, Mjolnir halted and started flying back to my open palm. Unfortunately for the witch, she was directly in front of the flight path of the legendary weapon. It crashed into her back as she had just stood up, making her faceplant with a shout of surprise. "Ha, I'm starting to really love this hammer." I raised it into the air, thunder clouds gathered overhead. Then I dropped it down, pointing at the witch who was getting back up again. A lightning bolt crashed through the roof and struck the witch. She tried shielding again like she had with Geralt, only for her shield to shatter. The bolt struck her with a blinding flash of light. I grinned and flipped the hammer in my hand. Geralt rushed back in looking at the smoking black spot on the ground. "She packed a punch," he grumbled. "No need for excuses, Geralt. I won't judge you too hard for getting sent flying by a storybook witch." I smiled at him. He sighed and glanced over my shoulder. His eyes hardened at whatever he saw. I frowned and turned to look at the sisters. Sylvia had a dagger pressed to Anna's throat. "Now that's not very nice." I hummed. 7 comments 0 vote. 1,000 fables. No one was prepared for me to teleport behind Sylvia and zap her with Mjolnir. The exiled princess convulsed like she had just been tased, which to be fair, she had. Then her limbs seized up as her nerves were overloaded. She fell back onto the floor unconscious. I deftly plucked the dagger out of her hands before she flopped. I noticed that everyone was staring at me. What? You have the elder blood. Geralt frowned. Oh, how can you tell? That blue light, I'm familiar with it. Can we talk about this later? I fear this place may be more dangerous than I remember. Anna added. You, Sylvia groaned from the floor. The key, the witch had the key. Jack is in the oven. Oh, you're awake. I glanced at Sylvia as she slowly struggled to her feet. And what the fuck do you mean Jack is in the oven? She means Jack from the story with the magical beans that grow a sprout so large it reaches the sky. Anna replied. Geralt looked confused. Why would we need magical beans? It is the only way out of this illusionary world since someone decided to break the other exit. Sylvia glared at Anna. Found the key. Geralt called to us from the pile of ash that was once a witch. Geralt let the boy out of the oven. The two sisters began conversing with the boy who seemed to recognize them. The boy then handed them a small sack before running off. Let us go, Anna said in a short tone. We all stepped out of the hut and made our way over to an open field. Anna took out 3 small beans from the sack before tossing them on the ground. I folded my arms over my chest, glancing at the beans laying on the ground. Is something supposed to happen? I asked. Curses. Anna Henrietta stomps over to the beans and looks at them closely. 2 of these beans must be fakes. Why would Jack give you fake beans? It does not matter, we will go find the other 2. Anna shook her head. Fine then, Geralt will go with Sylvia and I'll go with you. I suggested. Anna readily agreed. Geralt looked hesitant but agreed anyways. Sylvia was the only one to vocally disagree. Why, you're leaving me with an old man. I snickered at the look on Geralt's face. Before I could taunt him, Anna began dragging me away. I followed after the Duchess as we walked further down the yellow brick road. So, any ideas where to start? Some. We should look for Princess Longlocks. We have the blue bean and we need the red and yellow beans. Anna replied. I'm assuming Longlocks will be in that tower over there. I pointed towards a lone tower in the distance. Anna nodded. She awaits her prince at the very top. I wondered what other fairy tale stories were integrated here. There was the witch from Hansel and Gretel, then Jack and the Beanstalk. Now there was Rapnuzzle. Wonder who Geralt and Sylvia will run into. Scene break. Well, that's just morbid, I hummed. Hanging from the rafters is Rapunzel, or what was left of her at least. The poor princess had apparently hung herself with her own hair. Anna was silent, her eyes conveying her sadness at seeing what was probably one of her childhood friends dead. We should lay her to rest, she muttered quietly. Luckily for me, exorcising spirits was a specialty of jujutsu. Unfortunately I had no idea how to do that. I didn't think shrine was a very good technique to use for last rites. Ah, right, leave it to me then. I mumbled. I flicked my finger and cut the skeleton down from the rafters. Focusing a bit, a small ball of flames appeared in my hands. Thinking that I should at least say a few words, I began to speak. Fate was cruel to you, may you find peace in the next life. Man, that was lame. I slowly dropped the ball of flame onto the skeleton. The silk dress immediately caught fire. I felt something like gratitude wash over me. Anna sniffled at my side as the divine flames consumed what remained of the fabled princess. Anna and I held a moment of silence before she spoke up. We should look for the bean now. I nodded silently, then stepped away from her to search the room. I looked through the jewelry box on the vanity, then the drawers before moving on to a nearby shelf. Meanwhile, Anna searched through the bed. I've found it. I turned to look at her as she picked up a small bean from under the pillow on the large bed. I set down the book I was about to check for secret compartments and made my way over to Anna. She still looked distraught, so I pulled her into an embrace. She stiffened at first but slowly returned my hug. My own sister, she held a blade to my throat. Not knowing what to say, I rubbed her back and whispered. It'll all be okay, you'll see. Family is like that sometimes. Other times, you just need to kick their asses. I finally got a small giggle from her, like what you did with your hammer. I nodded along with her. Exactly, sometimes you just need to zap someone with a bit of lightning for them to realize that they're being stupid. Do you think she will ever forgive me? Anna asked. For what? She most likely sees me as someone who stood by and did nothing as she was exiled. Anna, you were children back then, what could you have done? I do not know. Something more. I am her sister, it was my job to care for her. I guess, but like I said, you didn't really have a choice in the matter, did you? She pulled away, dabbing at her eyes before glancing at me. You were right, I suppose. I must speak with her once this is all done. Good, talking it out is always better than lunging at each other's throats. Scene break. I looked at Geralt and Sylvia with barely concealed amusement. Geralt was soaking wet while Sylvia was smirking. She had a red cloak on that she definitely didn't have before we had split into groups. So, I started. I don't want to talk about it. Geralt interrupted. Chuckling, I shook my head. Fine, fine, we have all 3 beans now. No. Let's plant them and get the fuck out of here. I agree, let us get this over with. Sylvia glanced at Anna. Finding a spot on the ground, we deposited all 3 beans in a hole I made with my foot and covered them with some dirt. Everyone quickly stepped back as the ground began to shake. A massive bean sprout burst from the dirt and began to climb higher and higher into the sky. Huh, that's actually pretty cool, I muttered. Come on, let's go. Geralt grabbed onto the twisted vines and started climbing. Geralt, you don't expect everyone to climb that, right? I glanced at Anna, who was still wearing a dress. Anna met my eyes and huffed, please, I am not some helpless woman. She reached down and ripped her dress down to her hose and undergarments. She handed me the fabric and started climbing after Geralt. I shrugged and turned to Sylvia, who raised an eyebrow at me. What, do I have something on my face? I asked. No, I did not expect you and my sister to be very close. Well, we are fucking so, I grinned cheekily before storing the ripped dress in my inventory. Sylvia let out a startled sound as her eyes widened. However, I was already climbing away before she could press me for more details. The climb was much faster than I expected. I was surprised that Anna Henrietta had done it with little effort. Strands of her hair stuck to her face as she caught her breath at the top of the beanstalk. I can't believe we're actually standing on a cloud. I looked around, everything felt solid beneath my feet. Geralt was warily checking his surroundings as if expecting to fall back to the earth at any second. Sylvia arrived moments later, looking no worse for wear. What now? Geralt asked. We must find the fountain in the giant's castle. Anna replied as she stood up. Lead the way. I smiled at her. She started walking towards a large set of gates. Geralt and Sylvia followed close behind her while I brought up the rear. I was pretty shocked that nothing had attacked us so far. For as twisted as this fantasy world had become, the inhabitants still seemed to recognize the 2 women that used to play here as kids. We even passed by the giant, who gave us a brief glance before going back to stirring whatever was inside his large cauldron. Anna led us through the castle, eventually arriving at a large fountain in the courtyard. She looked back and hopped up on the ledge. Without another word, she jumped in and vanished in a splash of water. Geralt ran forward to look. When Anna didn't come back, he also stepped up onto the ledge. Before he could jump, Sylvia gave him a light shove before turning back to face me. You know, you're a very rude person. She smirked. So, you and Anna, huh? Really, that's what you're going to focus on? She shrugged. I have never seen my sister quite taken by anyone. Taken? Lady, she's royalty. I'm just some passing traveler. I'm sure I'm just a temporary interest to her. I rolled my eyes. You know nothing. Her smirk widened. She clearly has eyes for you. Take it from me, I'm her sister. Her sister, who she hasn't seen since you were kids. I corrected. Maybe so, Sylvia hummed, stepping into my personal space. That does not change that I know my own sister like I know myself. Her voice had dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. She bit her lower lip and met my eyes. Too bad you didn't accept my offer. Yeah, no thanks. What's that saying again? Oh yeah, don't stick your dick in crazy. She didn't react. Instead, she leaned in close and planted a heated kiss on my lips. I pushed her away and frowned, staring at her as she laughed. Never mind, Anna never liked it when I stole her toys. She stepped onto the ledge, shoulders still shaking lightly. Bitch, I muttered. That's cute. She turned and gave me a wink before jumping into the fountain. I sighed and took one last look around me before I stepped up to the fountain and jumped into the sparkling water. Scene break. Jumping into the fountain didn't feel like any sort of teleportation I've felt before. The system transported me instantaneously, no flashing lights, no sign of even moving. Just a blink and I was somewhere else. Teleporting with my new bloodline made me feel like I was falling through a particularly windy tunnel depending on the distance. With the fountain, it felt like someone had splashed cold water on me while I was having a bad acid trip. I blinked away the spots in my vision and glanced around. I had reemerged in Toussaint, standing in a large fountain at the heart of the palace in Beauclair. Anna, Geralt, and Sylvia were already drying off, some guards handing towels to Anna and Geralt while staring at Sylvia warily. A guard approached me and handed me a clean towel as well. I nodded in appreciation before stepping out of the fountain. I took off my sword belt and started drying off my hair and face. There you are, I was wondering where you had gone off to. Anna said as she walked over to me. Sorry for the delay, your sister just had some words for me. I replied. Oh, Anna turned to face Sylvia, who was grinning. And pray tell, what did she have to say? Relax, sister, I was just admiring your new toy. Sylvia answered in a casual tone. Ken he is not a toy, Sienna. Anna replied with some heat, and on that note, guards. Seize her. Sylvia looked shocked, before her eyes grew cold. I see, I am to be imprisoned. Anna nodded, for now, until we stop the beast you have set upon my kingdom. Sylvia let out a mirthless laugh. You haven't changed, Anna. And you have changed, sister. Anna let out a tired sigh as the guards escorted Sylvia away. She turned to me, eyes boring holes into my face. Did she do anything to you? She asked quickly, almost too quick. She kissed me. I found no reason to lie. Anna froze. I will have her flogged for this. I chuckled nervously. I pushed her away if that makes things any better. No, I mean, yes, you have done well, Sir Ken. She walked away quickly, but not before calling out over her shoulder. Come back in a few hours, I have some things to discuss with you. Right, I'll see you then. I raised a hand and waved lamely. Geralt clapped a hand on my shoulder. Nice one, kid. Shut up. To be continued.